call, please.
Mike Dolson,
I'm here.
Tom McDonald,
Une.
Jennifer Finley, Jim Molitor,
Here.
Carol Langford, Danielle Matt, Bing Matt, James Steele Jr.,
Yes.
Martin Charlo,
Present.
Len Tootieth,
I'm here.
Lenise Trahan.
Was a prayer this morning?
Thanks that we're all here. Able mind and able body. And I pray that we do our best work for our people because they're depending on us. And I pray for all the members of our tribe and of all of our descendants. Know that they belong here and that they are loved by this land. And that they are precious to this place, and that every one of us, every member of all the members of our tribe, every single person has a good purpose. And I pray that they remember that purpose to do good for the world and to do good for each other. And I pray for our country. I pray for our democracy, and that we do our part to protect our tribal sovereignty. Lem Lemsh.
We do have minutes from the 18th, February 18th. Approve the February 18th minutes with corrections. Jimmy? Today? And then we'll talk about end of the day. Up the agenda with the additions. Second by Tom. All in favor? Morning, Franny. Come on up. As long as it doesn't get too personal. If it is, then let me know. Yeah, it is.
Mic on.
Thank you. What brought it to my attention is the latest
Hazard tree removal, which I've done for 40 years. And forestry sent out this request. And in the list of requirements, and I'll read them. Number 1, complete a Form W-9 request by taxpayer identification number and certification. Number 2, Indian preference certificate. Number 3, debarment, suspension, ineligibility, voluntary exclusion, lower tier covered transactions. Number 4, certificate of workman's comp insurance, $1 million, general liability insurance, resume of past work, list of equipment. And I think that's all good. I talked with Steve, who's sitting here. And Steve, if you have anything to add, please jump in. And I asked him why the $1 million on I fight fire sometimes not. And my policy was $100,000 to protect the tribal membership. I said, okay. It cost me $120 to get the $1 million. And I'm thinking, when I fight fire with the same policy, that's good enough for the federal government. That's good enough for the state of Montana when I fight fire for the state of Montana. I use the same credentials to fight fire, and them are $1 million fires and assets at risk. But yet my own tribe is requiring me more than the federal government. And there might be tribal members that have $1 million house that could be. And I think if Steve would have been able to say, well, the last 3 guys we had do hazard tree removal smashed 5 houses that cost the tribe $20 million. That's why we're requiring $1 million. Okay, that makes sense. So maybe that's the case, but I wasn't told that. So somewhere that number came from something. So anyway, I got that done. So then he says, workman's comp. Well, it's usually my wife and I, who's a non-member, but you guys probably know Carol. She runs equipment with me. I do the falling, which I've been doing since I was 8. Everybody knows that. I say, so I don't really need workman's comp. And he says, yes, you do. And I said, the law says I don't have to have workman's comp. And anyway, we disagreed on that. So I brought a copy. I called workman's comp, and they sent the same thing to forestry. Under Title 39 Labor, Part 4, 39-71-401, employees covered in exemptions. Number 2, it says, unless the employer elects coverage for these employments under this chapter and the insurer allows an election, the Workers' Compensation Act does not apply to any of the following. Under that on B, it says casual employment. So I don't think that they're asking for the hazard tree removal guy to come to work every day and remove hazard trees. So I think it falls under casual employment. Then you go down to C, employment of a dependent member of the employee's family for whom an exemption may be claimed by the employer under the Federal Internal Revenue Code. That would be my wife, my son, my immediate family, whoever's dependent. So I wouldn't need it in that case. So then you go down farther, and by the way, there's like 30 exemptions. So you go down farther under M. A person, and this is what is extremely important to me that you hear. A person who is employed by an enrolled tribal member or an association, business, corporation, or other entity that is at least 51% owned by an enrolled tribal member or members whose business is conducted solely within the exterior boundaries of the Indian reservation. So that plainly says, I'm not required to have workman's comp on the reservation if it's a tribally owned business. And then the last one says, performs all services as an independent contractor pursuant to a written contract. So unless the tribe is hiring me as a hazard tree faller employee, either legally. Tribal employee, then your guys' insurance should cover me, right? Should cover me, right? What I'm trying to show you people is you're putting up roadblocks sometimes tribal members from working. It prevents a guy that might have a pickup and a chainsaw and the one tree is leaning right out into his field. He can't go cut that and make money to pay his bills, buy school clothes, because he's not going to be able to afford what I just afforded. I'm a blessed guy. I've done well with fires. But I'm looking out for the guys that was just like me, that had their electricity shut off various times because I couldn't pay. Those people. So if there's a reason for the stringent restrictions, I call them, okay. But you need to tell me why that's there. And it needs to be a factual reason why it's there, not just because I think that number sounds good or whatever reason. So that's just one example. This is even a larger example. This is over 40 pages. Jocko River Restoration Project, Bison Range Reach. It was a requirement in order to bid on this project. You had to go to a show me trip. Okay. I go to the show me trip. You know how many people was there? 43. Do you know how many people were tribal members? 2. Why is that? The tribe says it gets all this money. I've been told by the entity that produced this, oh, Franny, you and your boys will be so busy laying pipe, you won't even have time to fight fire. Do you think that entity has given us one job? To 43 white guys. And I'm not knocking white guys. I should reframe that. Non-members. So I contacted 2 of the bigger tribal member entities I know that does dirt work. They didn't bid. Not to bid. Because there are stringent requirements people can't meet. So how do you help the small guy get started? You do like the state. And the superintendent would be a good one to have in here. He ran the Bitterroot restoration of the Bitterroot River. I just sat there. You guys seen me talking to him. And I brought this up to him. I've asked, I want a list of the bidders, and I would like a list of what they bid. And who was the successful bidder? That to me? This is what I got today. What is the importance of them giving me this and what everybody bid? That'll help me. Maybe I'll be able to bid next time, or another tribal member could be able to bid next time. But you have to gain knowledge somewhere. And to me, I'm assuming that was federal dollars at some point. If it's federal dollars being spent, the taxpayer should be able to say, how much are we spending? Council would want that kind of knowledge out there. So for the tribal members to be able to say, well, next time I'm going to bid because I can do this, I can do that. And getting back to this, how the superintendent explained to me how the Blackfoot did theirs, is you had to go through a week-long training that they put on to bid. And then they broke everything down. If you had 2 dump trucks and they needed 50, well, who has 2 dump trucks? Oh, Cahoon has 2 dump trucks. Hey, Franny, do you want to hire your 2 dump trucks on? Now we only need 48 more dump trucks. Who else do you know, Indian, that's got a dump truck? So that's how they gave the people, in his own words, a hand up in that lived in the Bitterroot. Because their goal was to help the local people in the Bitterroot have jobs too. And I know that's what you guys want, is for your tribal membership to be successful. I've offered to help in any way I can. I think it would be handy to have someone available when projects come before you. Before that happens, you have somebody like myself that works outside the tribe say, oh, how is the Little Indians going to benefit from this? I can't remember their exact name, whatever, that caught it runs. Ask him. Yeah. Oh, Carol, I think you were at that meeting. Remember when I bet him $1,000 in public that it wasn't going to work? He would have had the bonding. All the big expensive stuff. That was their goal. That's what I understood. That's why the tribe made this entity, was to help little guys like myself and the other little Indians prosper that couldn't afford the workman's comp, that couldn't afford this, that couldn't afford that. That was what the tribal was doing for their people. Good idea. Is it working? Maybe, but for sure not for me. And so that's my only goal here today, is please, if I can help in any way. I'm on the outskirts of life. I don't need the work. I don't need the money. I want to help my people. If they want to be prosperous and have a new house and 5 new cars and an airplane, work. That's how you get that stuff. If there's anything you can think of to help, call me. Say, Franny, have you seen this that we're going to do? I'll gladly go through it and tell you, well, I think tribal members that I know could do this and this and this and this. Are they a rocket scientist? No. Okay, hire a non-member. But make sure that non-member rocket scientist is teaching a tribal member to be a rocket scientist. Your job qualification. You're not going to ride the tribal gravy train till you retire. Your job is do what we asked you and train one of our tribal people to do your job, because he's the tribal member and you're not, plain and simple. You guys have any comments?
So I was actually had something planned today, but Fran had called me and I thought this was a larger conversation that really needs to happen. And we've actually been having this conversation for like 10 years. And I'm just so tired of doing this over and over and over. So first thing I just want to go over is, business ownership, resolution 21-086. The resolution to foster business ownership among the membership consistent with the tribe's membership and vision. So Fran and I have had discussions for years and years, There has always been, ever since I was in high school, everybody says, get an education, go to school, and you get a good job. And the tribes have promoted that, and they've done a really good job at that. I decided to go a different direction. Like Fran says, a little Indian with nothing. I started out with nothing, and I worked and worked. And I became very successful. And so I sit here and I wonder, and I'm like, you guys got all these educated people, and Steve, he's a great guy, he's a very educated guy. And you listen to them. This is what we got to do. But we've been coming in as business owners, people who know how to start a business. And yeah, sometimes you have to take risk and you can't always have that insurance, that workman's comp, because it costs money. And when you start a business from ground up, you have to watch your budget. You have to be able to do stuff. Everybody wants to have that stuff, but it doesn't always happen. Or my statement is you've got two people here who've been coming in for years trying to get this across. Why don't you guys ask us our professional opinion? We've done it. He's gone through a lot more trials and had, a little different avenue. Me, not so much, but we've both been successful. We've had our failures, but we've learned from it. We have the knowledge to do in this resolution what needs to be done. I mean, how many people do you think on this reservation right now can say that they started a business without dependency of the tribe's money? And I don't want to tout, but I'm probably one of very few people that have done that without the dependency of tribal money. I've never gone after a contract. I looked at these contracts that Fran has looked at, and I look at what they require, and I'm like, well, I don't want to go through all that just to be told no. Like I said, I'm successful, but I'm not no big, rich non-member who has millions of dollars. So I still have to sit there and say, well, can I do that? Is that worth my time to go get that workman's comp, to go get that insurance? Not. So I understand what Fran's talking about. If it was more inviting and I saw a plan laid out, then I would invest money into that stuff, but I have never seen that plan laid out. And we've been on this forestry board with forestry trying to get this stuff through to them, and it's still, to bid on this job, you got to have, or you can only use limited equipment, a chainsaw and this to do it. I mean, you think about that. That's the craziest thing in the world. To say, okay, so you get an IT, but you can't use the internet. Successful. They can't. So when you limit tribal members by putting stuff like that on them, it's like I said, it's insane. Allow us to be successful. This is just is a bigger conversation, and I'm passionate about it. And when Fran, how do I say this? So we get it's like, Dan, he wants this. Fran, he wants this. And it's getting put in the minutes. Oh, Fran, he's coming here and asking this for him. But we're not doing it just for us. We want to see our membership succeed. So people who read the minutes, and I've read them before, and it sounds like, oh yeah, he's just a greedy guy looking to get all the benefits. That's not Fran. And I know him good enough. That's not what he's looking to do. So I just want you guys to really think of how we can make this resolution truly work for the people and really foster, you know, there's one, and this might be off subject. There's just one, there's a couple ideas. I'm always thinking of stuff. But, you know, recently we've had issues with the count of bison or the count of moose on the reservation. And they do a flyover, how much money that costs. And it's usually a non-member who gets the contract. It costs a lot of money. And I'm thinking, you know, instead of doing that flyover that costs hundreds of thousands of dollars, you know, with our technology right now, why don't we pay tribal members when they see a moose? Mark where they saw it, take a picture of it, bring it into Natural Resource Department, give them $100. We would know exactly how many moose are on this reservation. A lot cheaper than that $100,000 contract, and you're putting money into tribal members' pockets. And that we need. You know, I think you guys understand where we're coming from. You know, we can do this.
One last thing as a good example. I don't know if you're aware of the White Swan project that was going on last year. What happened was I got called by one of my friends, happens to be a county commissioner. Franny, you're going to come to this meeting? We're going to do fuel reduction. And I know you do that. I said, no one told me about it. Where's that at? It was at fire control. So my boys and I went. There was like 2 other tribal members and about 40 or 50 non-tribal members there from Kalispell, Missoula, all over. Money allocated to do fuel reduction on the reservation. To do fuel reduction on White Swan Bay, where I'm guessing most of the residents are non-tribal members. We're turning it over to Lake County because they do these projects before. Okay. So they say their little bit, and I raise my hand and ask, so are you following tribal preference? No, we're not. There is no tribal preference in Lake County. And I said, hey, wait a minute. Didn't I just hear that was tribal dollars that you're using? Yeah. But we can't do tribal preference. That's illegal in Lake County. And I said, well, it seems to me like if you're using tribal dollars, you should be able to have tribal preference. Well, we're sorry, but we're not. Things probably which I shouldn't. After the meeting, you scared the day after. I got called by one of the officials and said, we're having an emergency meeting. Can you come up? And I said, okay, what's it about? You making a phone call you shouldn't have made. And yeah, I went home and I called my congressman. I called some other people in positions I know. They agreed with me. Tribal dollars, we did not give your tribe tribal dollars to benefit the white people. They didn't use white people. I'm sorry, non-members. And I said, well, that's what they're doing. And they said, yeah, we'll see. Well, we had this emergency meeting. They said, you scared 3 or 4 white people and they don't want you on their property, Fran. I said, tell me their names. I ain't going to tell you their names. I said, will you tell them they can kiss you know what? I don't need them and I don't need your money. I don't need your work. But I said, this is wrong. Well, powers that be made a few phone calls. County commissioner friend calls me and is mad at me. Says, now you make us have egg on our face, Franny. We went out there and we marked all the trees to be cut, and every person on White Swan Bay that was going to have work done and tell them we're not doing it no more because the tribe pulled out and we have no money to do it. I said, then you should have listened to me in the beginning. We can't do tribal preference. I said, then don't use tribal money. Simple. Well, he calls me again about a week later and says, well, Franny, the 3 things that you asked us to do, we've agreed to do. To my knowledge, it's been a tribal member doing all the work at White Swan Bay. So that's an example of if somebody stands up for what is right with facts, it can change. Totally against it. I had a tribal member that Dan knows call me and say, Franny, great, I heard the tribe's going to do some fuel reduction. I got some dead stuff around my house. Can you come and cut those trees from my house? And I had to say, no. We're cutting white people's trees that live on their place 1 month out of the year on Flathead Lake. What? That as an example that things can change. You guys, in my opinion, directing the department heads, you will find some way to help the tribal membership here if we grant you this right to do that work, whatever they choose to do. And if they need help determining how they can help people, I'm more than willing to say, yep, I'll read through it and I'll give you examples how I think it might help. And with that, I would just like to close and tell you, thank you. You're doing a good job. Right from wrong. Your department heads learn that also. Thank you.
Thanks, Franny. Anything else, Dan? Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Franny and Dan, thanks for coming in. I go back to the contracting insurance thing, because I even tried to hire Steve back when he was in college to be on my tree planting crew, but I don't think you came, Steve. I think you're too interested in some other type of extracurricular. Yeah, okay. I guess you did come out, yeah. You know, I think when you talk about workman comp thing, I don't recall that, I'm not sure exactly what that is, but there's exceptions to not have to do workman comp.
Right.
The other thing about insurance is when I started my raft company, when I quit firefighting, I started my raft company in 1982 and 83. I had to have $1 million liability coverage then. So I think it's something that I would say probably for, depending on what the circumstances are, to protect the tribal interests, you always go for the deep pockets. So we have to have a filter of, you know, a wall kind of trying to protect the core of the tribal membership's funds. There has to be some insurance. I think there's some that could be adjusted to more and some that could be adjusted to less. I don't know that. I think that raises a good question of what is the correct amount of insurance, but I know we're going to have insurance. But I think there's flexibility in workman comp, and you're right on with SKMM. We created that. We charge that to try to do better, to try to provide jobs, to be able to have small tribal operators go under that umbrella, have them train up people, have them build that workforce that we can benefit from this $1 billion of improvements that are coming our way. That's what that was for. And that was one element I'd say that they have kind of faltered at in technologies is building that training, or, you know, trying to really build that. And it's a challenge. It's a challenge with them to do that. And I think there's a little bit more influence now in the better way to go. But and you know, and Chad knows about these contracts. He worked on the Little Bitterroot reservoir betterment thing that was a Fish and Wildlife project on lower Little Bitterroot to finish that up. He did another project too that back in the day we had another corporation that would bid on those projects. Bob Foudy and those guys were all part of it, and he was part of that too. Kevin Thomas and that crew. So he knows that experience, but we can definitely do better with SKM. There's no doubt about that. And you're right. Why didn't they bid on the Jocko thing? And why aren't they bidding on every project that we have on the betterment for the irrigation project? I still don't know that answer. And I will push for that every day, because I think we absolutely need to do that, because that provides that general contractor that it's more appealing to be able to get the small tribal contractors to be able to work for that project. So I agree with you. And I think that's what SKMM was supposed to be doing. And I just want to agree with you on that.
Carolyn, go ahead.
Yeah, I believe that SKMM was set up to do exactly what you said, Fran, but I think they got so bogged down with all the other monies that came in, and they started working on all these projects of HVAC and everything else, that it basically took them off of the project and their eye on the ball of what they originally were intended to do. And so I think it's a matter of this council telling them that you're going to get back on track, and you're going to make sure that we are still building our private entities and ownerships to be able to do this work. So I think that's where it went awry. Secondly, I think everything we do is a balance. I don't think Steve's out there trying to do anything that he shouldn't do. He probably seen something in CF bar, or it's been required before. But I think you're absolutely right, Fran. You know, doing my own private business now and working on Viper and understanding all of the process, but what you said about not workman's comp, but the insurance, that's absolutely right. Federal government says you have to go up to 100,000, you know, and we go up to 1 million. Why? Well, maybe it's the severity of what you're doing, because when you drop a tree and you kill somebody, or you lands on a house, like you said, it could be very serious. But yeah, I think there's a lot of things we can look at, and I agree. You guys bring a lot to the table that we definitely need to incorporate. But this organization sometimes is so big that those things don't get back to us. And so I think periodically we need to hear from you. And I am glad you're in here to tell us exactly what, you know, these options are. But it's not, I don't think Steve's doing anything wrong. I think he's just required to do what he has done in the past. You know, that's what the requirement is, to protect the tribe. And everybody knows, everybody's sue happy these days. They'll sue us at the drop of a hat. And now it's probably even worse. So I think they're just protecting the interest of the tribe and not trying to hurt you guys, but basically it is, because $125 to a private business person, a lot of money, and it adds up.
That's additional. I probably didn't state that correctly. That was to raise mine. I do have workman's comp, and that's my choice. Even though I know I don't have to have it legally, I choose to have it. And that's my option. And I think that's the way it should be. It should be up to the individual. And if you lose your house and your truck and your airplane and your helicopter because you don't have it, then that's on you. But you're right, Carolyn, I'm not knocking Steve. Steve and I have talked about this, and I told him I have workman's comp, but I didn't have the million. And he said that that's what we needed, so that's why I went up. Any other questions or comments?
Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, so the amount that was set for this hazard tree removal
came at the recommendation of contracts and grants people because of the nature of the work. We're dealing with dangerous trees, large trees that could potentially, if something went wiki-wow, damage a house or destroy a house. And houses these days, there isn't anything under, unless you're living in a trailer, even those are $200,000, or a house is $600,000, $800,000. You drop a tree on a house, you're protecting yourself, because if you don't have that amount to cover that damage, then they're going to come after the contractor. It's not the tribe they're going to come after. The same with the workman's comp. It's hard for me to imagine that doing this kind of work, that you wouldn't have at least one or two employees with you to be working. You wouldn't be cutting large, dangerous trees by yourself. You'd want a spotter, and then the cleanup that comes up after that is very labor intensive. So I can't imagine you wouldn't have help doing this kind of work, and you're protecting those individuals. An individual gets hurt, those medical bills grow very quickly depending on their injuries, and you're protecting yourself again. Plus, you're also protecting that individual who got hurt. So, as far as I understand it, there isn't a hard requirement in the contracts and grants as the amount of liability or insurances. But these were the recommended amounts based on the type of work that was being done. And most of our contractors who do heavy equipment kind of stuff, this is the level of insurance that's required. So that's kind of where that comes from.
And I don't want you guys to think that I'm saying you shouldn't have insurance. That's totally not correct. The amount, I'm saying, maybe could have been a little less, Steve, than $1 million.
And I appreciate that you're in compliance, and all the other contractors are in compliance with that. So that was a requirement that we put on this because of the nature of the work.
And then just to add, I think this is the second time it was advertised, because the first time they didn't have enough people that put in. And I'm assuming it's
the first time we put out the request for,
just request executive just for a second. I just have some stuff I want to bring up that just for and I promise it'll be really quick.
We will go out of regular into executive. Back into.
Yeah, but it's not.
Steve, good morning.
Oh, Tracy did. Briefly go over what was presented on Monday for the enrollment committee. Just the resolutions that need to be approved.
Yep.
Okay.
That's what we're expecting.
Okay. So the first one that we will go over would be for CJC. CJC, there was a avuncular DNA test done in-house that confirmed biological parents, which made her eligible for enrollment.
Entertain a motion to accept the resolution for DNA. Motion by Tom to accept the DNA results for CJC to increase blood quantum.
Thank you.
Don't get too far ahead of us. We gotta get the second and the vote.
Okay.
Second by Jennifer. All in favor? Next. Yep, there's
Next
thumbs all
resolution.
over. Good.
Next resolution will be for JSS. This was also a avuncular DNA test that was done in-house that approved biological parents and approved them for enrollment.
I'm trying to figure.
You're on page 4.
You're going fast.
Yeah.
I think they're a
you're-
page each.
You're way ahead. We're right here. Yep.
All of the packets were in the other day's packet, so that they're all available, but we have only the resolutions here today, so. Motion by Tom to accept the DNA results for JSS, increased blood quantum. All in favor? Next one.
On to page 5, which is for Robert Leonard Milton. Correction under the 1943 census roll. And falls under the original constitution, so he made him eligible for enrollment.
Motion by Tom to accept the Robert Leonard Milton enrollment eligibility. All in favor? Unanimous?
Thank you. Okay, on to page 6. Shirley Jean Hitchcock. She also falls under the original constitution and made her eligible for enrollment.
For the 1954 census roll to include Shirley Jean Hitchcock. Second by Jimmy. All in favor? Be unanimous.
Four biological parents approved, which made 883673 eligible for enrollment.
Whatever his, or him, is that person an adult?
Yes.
And we can't list their names?
With the DNAs, we decided to keep them just through their numbers.
When was that? When did we decide that?
When we first started resolutions with them.
Accept the DNA results for 883673. All in favor? Go ahead, Carol.
Okay, if somebody had a question on this one and they wanted to know whose names and their tribal members, can they find out? I mean, just transparency.
We don't usually, unless they're, maybe,
Unless they're a family member.
if they're immediate family, we'll give it to them, but if they're not, we don't.
Okay. I mean, I'm just,
Yeah, because of confidentiality.
yeah, just transparency of enrollment, so touchy sometimes that people, and so just so I know. Thank you.
Tom, go ahead.
And they do complain, a lot of people complain about us enrolling less than a quarter. They don't realize that the law, they meet the requirements of enrollment at the time they were born. So it keeps that name from being in there so that they're not jumped outside of enrollment saying, you know, you shouldn't be enrolled.
Mr. Chair, I think one of the great things about DNA testing is it's absolute. I mean, there is no doubt. I mean, you wouldn't reverse your decision. If you did, then it would be political or vindictive or whatever. It's just absolute facts. And so I don't need to see the names, but I mean, Carol, that's the way I would look at it, especially for DNA. Anyway, thank you.
And that's another thing that I do want to talk about. I do want to say thank you to all of you for allowing us to do this. This has been a huge success. We've completed 60% of our cases, and it's been nothing but great for tribal members. Thank you.
All in favor for 883673?
Have a good day.
And be safe. Chauncey, Rich.
Or Craig or someone, you guys can move the mouse over there for your guys' pages.
Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman, members of the Tribal Council. The Shoreline Protection Board approved about 2 months ago raising its fees for docks and wharves and such around the south half of Flathead Lake. The proposed fee increase, the third since 2017, have approximately 3,200 lakeshore owners. And based on last year's fees that was collected, came to approximately $277,000. And that's not including around 43 owners that have not paid their annual administrative fees that's mailed out every July. My compliance officer, Willie Burke, has been working with these folks there by phone and mailing non-compliance letters to work with these folks to get back into compliance. It would be roughly approximately $1,108,000 a year. And under the Tribe Shoreline Protection Ordinance, 64A revised, the Shoreline Protection Office has since 1977 issued permits for work in navigable waters within the tribe's jurisdiction, including docks and other structures located on the bed and banks of the south of Flathead Lake, below the high water mark of 2893.2 feet. Ordinance 64A revised section 5C3, reasonable annual charge or rental fee. The Tribal Council, as a condition to the issuance and continued effectiveness of the construction permits issued hereunder, may require the payment to the tribes of a reasonable annual charge or rental fee for the use of tribal land by any structure repaired or maintained pursuant to this section. The annual charges or fees set by the Tribal Council may vary based on the type of structure involved, and as to any type of structure involved, and as to any type of structure may vary based on the size thereof. And I will stop right here and we can go over the fee schedule there that we have. I believe we sent up with.
When was the last time we raised fees?
2017.
We did raise.
Mhm.
It's only the second time.
Yeah. Third time. Yeah. The third time there, the fees have been, increased. And I don't know if you have the, new proposed fees.
Yeah, they were included in the packet.
Okay,
Len has,
they're right here.
Len has
I have
a
it on
question.
I just have a quick comment here. First of all, I want to thank you guys all for coming in with these proposed changes, and I would support doubling these. You know, just knowing what we have out there today. It's just phenomenal or astronomical about all of the docks that we have out there. And and all the people that are moving in, right? But I think that would send a strong message that we're really paying attention to the number of docks that are starting to pop up again. Because it's just, especially when you look at the aerial photo of the lakeshore. I mean, none of our members have very limited access points to even get to the lake. And then we have all these people moving in and wanting to put more docks out there. And but I seen that we have this one part highlighted, dynamic beach. Can you elaborate on that?
I will turn that over to Craig there since he's been dealing with that. This is sort of it kind of raises I've been having a hard time struggling with this there because the ordinance prohibits the fill material into the lake bed. And I will let Craig elaborate more on that. Go ahead, Craig.
Morning, Chairman Dolson, members of the council. Thank you for allowing us to bring this forward today. As Frank said, the dynamic beaches are a fairly recent development in ways to combat shoreline erosion on the lake, which can be a problem on the reservoir, sorry. And most people don't realize or don't want to believe they live on a reservoir regulated by a dam that's not, you know, that operates within a license, a federal license. So it is a reservoir, not a lake. The ordinance expressly prohibits fill in the lake. And dynamic beaches are essentially fill in below the high water mark of the lake. So it's not a little bit, it's even for a small beach is quite a lot of fill. And in order to retain these beaches within the riparian property lines of the landowner, we have to allow them to, again, go against the ordinance by essentially building a non-flow through dock to keep that gravel within their property lines. The ordinance expressly states that people need to build flow through docks for the first 10 feet lakeward from the high water mark. And that's a lot of the old docks that we deal with, the grandfather docks. That's one of the big things is they're crib docks. So they allow no flow through. So they get this real natural buildup of gravel inside their docks. And once they come in and they have to come into compliance, we require them to have the first 10 feet be flow through so that gravel is allowed to migrate along the beach naturally. So we have reservations about, we always have reservations about bringing these to the shoreline board, wondering even if the board has the authority to allow this amount of fill to be placed in the lake. It's really, there was no fee schedule in place because they really started to come into place since the last fee increase. So there's really nothing to go off of. And unfortunately, the software system we have now isn't really set up to be able to charge by amount of or volume of fill. So we come up with this lineal distance along the beach, just some type of fee that would at least be assessed for as wide as their beach is going to be. The amount of fill, the volume really depends on the structure of the lakeshore at that certain place, whether it's, you know, how deep it is, how flat it is, how quickly it drops off. So I mean, you can have a narrow beach still take quite a bit of fill. You have a really wide one, not take relatively near as much fill based on the topography of the lake bed. Just to expand a little bit on the fee increases, this is a rather large fee increase, both square footage, and I'd like to point out that in previous fee increases, the application fee has never been addressed, has never been raised. The one-time fees were never raised. So now we're looking at bringing the application fee kind of up to par with Flathead County, which is obviously the other permitting agency on this lake that's outside of our jurisdiction. We feel this is, and we've been told, even before I took this position, working in Shoreline and being close to Jim's desk, I hear this a lot. We've been told by contractors that we're not charging near enough, that they can't believe we're charging $50 for an application. Sure.
Know what the fee is for Lake Coeur d'Alene?
It's hard to compare because they don't charge square footage. They charge by a unit. And it's varies a lot, and it's hard to compare that to our system, how we charge. We charge by the square foot. They charge by per unit. It was hard to compare apples to oranges, whereas Flathead County being right next door, with kind of the same system we have, it is much easier to compare and being this close. Essentially, the contractor said, well, people can see that if they live in Flathead County, they have to pay $500 or close to $500 for an application fee. Somebody who lives on the reservation has to pay $50 for an application fee. One bit of pushback that I've heard talked about before, is that we charge an annual fee and Flathead County don't. Well, they get assessed taxes on those improvements. People complain they get double taxed here because we charge them an annual fee based on square footage, and Lake County charges them taxes assessed on improvements on their property. It's technically not improvements on their property. So that argument is really the landowner's argument with Lake County, not with us. So our square footage fee kind of, it takes the place of an actual property tax on improvements on property. So got everything in line with that, and also looked at increasing all of the one-time fees for retaining walls, riprap, rail systems. Before I come over here, I was looking at just the application fee alone. We process in the neighborhood of 275 applications a year, which would increase that revenue from roughly $13,000, $14,000 to $130-some thousand.
Go ahead, Rich.
Good job, Craig. Just wanted to inform the council that we are seeing a lot of these older docks that have been grandfathered in when the shoreline ordinance was put into place back in '82 that are starting to need to be rebuilt completely, over 50%. So those become brand new, or essentially brand new structures. So we're starting to see that happen around the lake. And, when you talk about lakeshore access, essentially what we're seeing, at least, and correct me if I'm wrong, that most of the parcels that have docks on them, we don't see any new docks coming into play. Almost every parcel out there that can have a dock has one. And what you're seeing is the rebuilds that are occurring.
or maybe a little more?
That's not completely true. I know, I've heard Jim and Frank talk about this for years now, that, there's nowhere left to put a new dock, but I've honestly, even since I've taken over, I've permitted a fair number of brand new docks. A lot of it, or not a lot, but probably a majority of it are people splitting parcels. Someone owns 200 or 300 feet of lake frontage and they split it. Yeah. Whether through sale or through family. I've had a couple where families had 300 feet of lake frontage and they've split it between their children. And so there's 3 lakefront parcels now that are each 100 feet with enough frontage for docks. So you go from 1 dock to 3 docks. So yeah, I have permitted, even in my short tenure, a fair amount of brand new constructed docks.
But they have to follow our rules. They can't just build a dock wherever.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. So so on the grandfathered structures that Rich was referring to, those, if they want to rebuild them, they have to excuse me, into compliance with our current regulations. If they don't want to, they come in front of the board. We bring them in front of the board and they request a variance. We just had a big one on Melita Island Road, the Wild Horse Island dock owners. And have a big, essentially almost a marina, big common use dock on not enough frontage. That's actually been repaired over 50% and documented. And then wanted to repair it again, and the board denied them. They told them no. I mean, they don't really have much of an option. They have a couple 219 feet of frontage. They can build 2 or 3 private type docks, but they're really, what people have done, they've really essentially gotten spoiled by having something that was grandfathered, that was constructed prior to the ordinance. And a lot of these structures are now reaching the end of their useful existence and being repaired up to that 50% point, to where, probably a lot of them are going to go away or be drastically reduced in size when they're rebuilt.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Gentlemen, thanks for coming in. I appreciate you adjusting the fee schedule. A couple of questions. First one, have you gotten a lot of requests for variances because of the pool elevation issue? People wanting to adjust their structures?
Yes, we have,
And then,
especially during the low water year, a couple of years ago when we had that. And we do have 2 places within the ordinance there that would allow that. Would be like other projects or other structures that would cover that there. So we're in good shape on that.
the question about I just lost it, the dynamic beach. So this was always a struggle, being an old guy, being here. I remember when we hired Frank. But the dilemma that we have for Flathead Lake is a natural lake. And so technically, we could say, I went with the argument that you had there, Craig, because under the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, for a reservoir, and us being the owner, operator, and licensee of the reservoir dam, we, under FERC law, have regulatory control over the entire water body as far as structures. But because it is a natural lake and we didn't increase the pool elevation, all we did was hold the high water of the natural lake and release it over time. It is not under the same provisions. That's what our legal counsel, what EKI's legal counsel has said, contrary to my discussions with FERC. So it's an interesting debate. But to go back into time before the dam was built, there were literally at least 10,000 acres more of property, real estate around Flathead Lake. And because we hold the lake since the dam was built at that longer elevation at full pool, the lake is not at equilibrium with shoreline stabilization. It's continually eroding away. So you can look at Ducharme Bay or Kings Point Bay or the whole massive river delta on the North Shore it was 5 miles out, the outlet of the river, before the dam was built. You could stand 5 miles into the lake on terrestrial land. That is the alluvial fan of the Flathead River. That's all gone. It's all washed away. It's continual erosion. So part of the interesting thing that people have done, especially since Montana Power Company, once they started altering and messing with the way that they manage the pool elevation, and their stockholders started to purchase property around Flathead Lake, Montana Power Company stockholders began to put pressure on Montana Power Company to operate the lake differently, to make it more of a recreational pool, because they were starting to invest. And so that ended up with the hit that target date in June, fill it up to there, but you don't have to hold it. That's a consequence of Montana Power Company stockholders and influencing the company. But that added to the additional shoreline erosion of that lake, because they were holding it at full pool longer and we were causing all this erosion. So people's response to that, as they had these recreational properties, were to armor their shoreline. Where there was a natural shoreline there before that provided for the biotic community, the aquatic life cycle in the fisheries, it was no longer that way. They went and had a gravel beach that provided for all kinds of aquatic reproduction and support to a seawall. So we went from a really cool beach with small fish and all kinds of invertebrates and to a vertical wall with no habitat. That was a direct impact and loss of our fisheries, consequence of people reacting to this alteration of the lake level and keeping it full pool during the summer when it should have been drawing down on this natural scheme of the beach and shoreline that had developed for hundreds of thousands of years. So we go and try to protect this lake because it's important to us. We win the naming case. And we're trying to develop rules to make sure that things are, better. Well, one of those betterment ideas was, there's all these people are doing this, they're messing the shoreline up here. The traditional winds and waves come from this way. It's eroding here, and that gravel, the erosion from holding the pool at full pool now under an unnatural condition is eroding that gravel, and it's moving down shoreline, causing problems for adjacent neighbors. And, Lloyd goes, well, we just got to get it. We got to let that flow through. We got to let that flow through. Well, on ocean dynamics, where you're trying to hold on to shoreline, you're trying to cause and stop that, cause the effect of wave action. Jetties are installed. Jetties that help anchor gravel from moving. If you want to hang on to it, you put jetties out. And a jetty is the exact opposite of our flow through, our immediate flow through. So that was it. It was interesting to have that dilemma for us and have this restorative need to be responsive to the aquatic interest of the lake. And how can we stop from just building seawalls, whether it's just solid riprap or straight vertical walls, but let's do something more natural, which is the dynamic beach. And the dynamic beach basically causes you to break the wave that's coming in, causing all that erosion, hitting that energy, run on the shoreline edge and eroding into the terrestrial landscape. It's breaking the wave farther out in a terrace system. So you take that energy out of that wave action where it's only, like, say, 3 feet deep, and it causes the effect of lots of fill. Be able to break those waves and provide that habitat for fisheries and other wildlife and water quality interests. And so it flies in the face of Army Corps of Engineers field requirements. It flies in the face of the Shoreline Protection Board, but it's a restorative action. So I'm here to say that I support the restoration of the aquatic ecosystem of Flathead Lake through dynamic beaches, because I know it's the right thing to do. Because it's the way that we support the native fishery, flora and fauna, the whole ecosystem of Flathead Lake. And what I would hate to see is that we have a fee schedule that's the same as someone building a dam retaining wall or riprap. So what I would want to make sure that if we were going to start charging for the dynamic beach, it's the least costly, because I really would like to see encourage people to do it and not make it cost prohibitive, and encourage more landowners to do that. To think of, here's a colossal group of docks that are out there, and they all have their little armament and they're still having issues from wave action. Is there a way that they all can come together and we can just repair that whole thing? Have one common dock and have a shoreline that's restored. It's better for everything, all things considered. That would be an ideal system for me. The other ideal system is if you're talking about an invasive species, I would actually put a penalty fee on anybody that's putting in a dock and even marinas that are leaving boats in the water and not putting them up on the shore station that dries them out, or not putting them on a rail station that put them up on the shore. Because I can tell you for a fact that most of aquatic mussels, you know, zebra or the other one, are basically a consequence of leaving a boat stationary in the water for days at a time. Because that allows for that spread of mussels into the water, because they again can filter, they can drop right below that boat, and that's how you get your start. If you can get your boat in and out of the water and dry it out every day, either through a shore station or a rail system, that's another way that we protect the aquatic system of Flathead Lake. So I would encourage the Shoreline Board to consider an additional support fee for aquatic invasive species, because if you leave your boat in the water, and I know a lot of people that do, that is, but it's not an issue if your boat's not going anywhere else. If your boat's just simply on Flathead Lake, it's not a problem. You can't guarantee that. But if the intention of their dock design or wharf design is to leave boats stationary floating in the water overnight or for the whole summer, that's where the risk is. Those sailboats on those sailboat docks, you know, they move them around, they're coming here or whatever it might be, and they leave them parked for a long time. That allows for the longevity for a zebra or you know, mussel invasion to start, or some other aquatic invasive species. So I would just encourage the board to consider something like that. But otherwise, I'm with Len. You know, I think you know, I think we need to adjust the fee because it's impact to us, and we have all these other things going on. It's that total holistic cumulative enterprise that NRD is doing and other folks to protect our water quality, protect Flathead Lake. So you know, I think that those folks that have their recreational dock on Flathead Lake and have their wakeboard boat sitting there, you know, they're millionaires from wherever, they can afford to pay, and they should pay a reasonable fee. And you guys have been really considerate and undervalued as far as what you do and your fee structure. So thank you.
Go ahead, Lynn.
I noticed that Flathead County has a during or after the application fee. Let's see, what was it? What was the language on there? It was regarding putting the project in. Let's see, where is that? Something similar to that language where they quadruple the fee.
Can I answer that?
Yeah.
Actually, so if it's after the fact, we turn it to the compliance officer, and then we usually typically leave it up to the board to assess, levy fines, or to impose curative measures. That's typically how we've run it in the past.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just want to let the council know that we are gonna utilize Rob McDonald to come up with a fact sheet, because we hope, but we want to be proactive should we get a little pushback from people, although it's going to be put in the paper now. And by the time this fee schedule, we believe, is in place, that the snowbirds will be coming back. And this will be effective, what, next year? Not this year?
Hopefully by July.
Hopefully by July it'll be effective, and you know, it's their own fault for not being here or living here. But
so a couple of things. I mean, if you guys want, we can talk to the board and implement like a set suggestion for, you know, construction done without a permit. If you'd rather see a set amount, or, I mean, we could definitely investigate that further if you'd like. because it would be, you know, it'd look different on a dock compared to a boat ramp compared to a personal watercraft lift or something. But yeah, they usually, after the fact, stuff that is discovered is usually, I believe, permitted after the fact, but a fine levied, or ordered to be removed and a fine, which is the latest compliance action we had with something unpermitted was ordered to be removed and a fine levied. Mr. Vice Chairman, I didn't want to imply that I'm arguing the efficiency or the effectiveness of dynamic beaches. I'm just simply have reservations about it being in direct defiance of what's defined in the ordinance of placing that much fill in the lake. I believe they work too. I think it's a little early on to tell how great they are, simply because he's having to revisit some of them. But I'm definitely not arguing the effectiveness of them. Simply that it flies right in the face of our ordinance, and it's not a little bit of fill in most instances; it's hundreds of yards of fill. And then as far as a fee for someone leaving their boat on I think something like that's great. I don't know about the feasibility of implementing that. I think it'd be a monumental task, but finally, would you prefer us to fees on the dynamic beaches or increase the retaining wall riprap fees?
Yeah, thank you, Craig. I would definitely go after the retaining wall riprap fees. If you were to go one way or the other, I think you're undervalued. So that's my first statement. So the other thing about designing a structure to leave boats in the water 24 hours a day or for the entire season. Again, that when I think of all the times I responded to a boat that sunk because of a storm or something like that, and it's because they leave it in the water. And so if we're going to treat, our water quality in our lake the best we can, it's in our best interest to make sure that there isn't any boat left in the water 24 hours a day. That they come out of the water, either in a shore station, out of the water, high and dry, or they're on a rail system, or they're pulled out with a boat trailer. I think that's the way we really need to look at Flathead Lake. So if you can, I know it could be a nightmare, but I think that would be something that would just encourage the shoreline board to look at. But again, that's another justification of raising fees. I mean, how are we responding to those incidents? How are we dealing with that? How is your disaster emergency services and all your, your fuel containment, your oil slick, all those things are all factors in stuff that you guys do, shoreline protection, NRD. So, yeah, you can justify it. You need to have a big account there to have to deal with the disaster. You need to have a lot of money available to be able to respond and have the equipment ready and have the staff ready to be able to respond to those things. It's just getting more severe every day as we get to climate change and these events. I don't know what the violent storm on Flathead Lake will be 20 years from now. But I know if I got a boat and sitting in some dock, it's probably not going to survive it.
Carol.
Where is this dynamic beach, or is that something that's all around the lake?
Sailor's Point is a dynamic beach.
Uh-huh.
Oh. Anyway,
Blue Bay is a dynamic beach as well.
There was a place right as you go Ducharme Bay, and there's that used to be a rancher with the tall. Me and Rhonda Swaney were out there one day, and we could tell that it was being filled in. And this was, I don't know, probably 15 years ago when we were first looking at that parcel of property. And so is that part of this? I mean, are you guys aware of that parcel being filled in?
I wasn't aware of it.
We could tell that it was fill, and it's like she said, this wasn't this big at one point, and then it started to get bigger and bigger. And I could tell it was like they were expanding out into the lake and increasing their lake shore, because, if you go like this, it's a lot more lake shore. So.
We do allow for, when people put in retaining walls, they are allowed to go 3 feet lakeward to build their wall and essentially So they do gain a little bit of lake frontage by placing a wall 3 feet out from the ordinary high water mark and then filling behind there. Excuse me? That I'm not sure. Actually, we're not even working under a Corps of Engineers permit at the moment. It is expired and
I recall the 3 feet out, but I also thought that there was a limit of 1 cubic yard.
per foot.
Yeah,
I believe so. But
yeah,
like I said,
fill.
we're actually not, we don't have a working permit with the Corps of Engineers at the moment. We're working on getting another one put in place. So that may be, I don't know for sure. That's
It's way out there.
okay.
It's not 3 feet. I mean.
Okay. It's because they were only allowed to do it one time to gain that 3 feet to put in a retaining wall. They can't continue to do that.
There was
So
no retaining wall. It just looked like they had put
they just kept
riprap
putting
and
fill in.
grass on.
Oh, okay.
Keep building it. And it was obvious to me that this was.
Yeah, that definitely wouldn't be allowed under the ordinance, and it certainly was prior to and not permitted as a dynamic beach, that's for sure.
Definitely.
Isn't that defined in the ordinance?
Excuse me?
Dynamic beach is not defined in the ordinance?
No.
Is that an addition we should do?
Well, under the ordinance 64A revised section 3A, it shall be prohibited after the effective date of this ordinance for any person to make or cause to be made on the bed or banks of any navigable water below the high water mark, any fill or deposit of rock, earth, sand, soil, gravel, shells, or other materials or refuse matter of any kind or description, whether for the purpose of constructing a landfill or other structure other than a structure referred to in sections 4 and 5 of the ordinance. Under the 64A regulations, chapter 3, policy considerations, landfills and dredging, 3.1B, filling of a portion of a lake may have adverse effects due to the destruction of the aquatic environment, loss of habitat for fish and wildlife, creation of an unnatural shoreline, creation of a steep beach areas, and alteration of current flows and wave action. And under 3.2 standards C, fill projects for the purpose of expanding existing land areas is strictly prohibited. You're asking for direction on this there. So right now we're kind of going against the ordinance itself there by allowing these dynamic beaches there to be placed within the lake there. I think when they first done this, the previous administrator had allowed this as experimental portion to do this. And after I took over, I looked at this there and I'm really uncomfortable with these dynamic beaches are because it is against the ordinance.
Well, we'll be in real trouble if we start charging fees for them and it's not in the ordinance. Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Again, it's, back in the beginning of the Shoreline Protection Office, we didn't have the information that we have today, and we didn't have the consideration we have. And so I guess I would suggest that as the chairman has suggested, that we look at the ordinance, revise it as needed, and bring it up to date with all things considered. The information and the science that we know today. We didn't have a world-renowned beach expert on contract back then. That's been working on this on the ocean and different locations. So we do have a lot of different, and we did, as you said, Frank, it's experimental. And so we were trying to learn from it, see if this would work. And I think given the scale and location, site-specific nature of each spot, it is, for me, doable. But I think we would want to be reflective of that in the ordinance. So I would recommend, as the chairman said, that we get the ordinance in compliance of what we're doing today, or the science that we have. And if there's any further consideration or study needed, we would express that in the ordinance also, or limit it as such. But thank you.
Good, Craig.
So for the time being, would you like us to not charge fees for dynamic beaches until we revisit the ordinance? And then second part to this, even though we're still not going to charge for dynamic beaches, would you still like to see the fees increase even more for retaining walls and riprap?
Actually, I would like to
least
see the fees
1,000.
for the dynamic beach, maybe less than they are. But I'd like to see that exception to the ordinance made rapidly, put in place as soon as we can, so that the fees we're charging is contrary to the ordinance.
So
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I agree. I think that you would want to have a fee for dynamic beaches, but after it's done correctly with the revision of the ordinance. But I would still, as my initial argument is that I think that's in our best interest, the ecology of the lake, to promote that where practicable, feasible, or wherever, site-specific nature of each request, over a retaining wall, over a riprap shoreline.
Good, Rich.
What I would like to suggest is, we continue with the fee schedule, hearing from the council and what you guys said, maybe double the fees for the retaining walls to 1,000, and then work with our legal department on revising the ordinance, to include dynamic beaches, so we can get that in the fee schedule as well.
I believe it would just be an exception to it'd just be an exception to that section, I would think.
big language for dynamic beaches.
Right. As being exempted from the requirement not to fill the lake.
Double retaining walls and riprap, because riprap is cheaper, or wooden retaining walls are cheaper than concrete retaining walls because they're less. They're preferred over concrete retaining walls. So look at 2,000 for retaining walls, 1,000 for riprap or wood retaining walls.
I don't know if they said that. I think we can go back internally and discuss those, and then bring them to the board, or if we have to do that. But what I heard from the council is at least double the fees on those two.
Right, and keep fees for dynamic beaches in the fee schedule. Okay.
Carol.
If we're gonna modify the ordinance, we need to work with legal, is that?
Oh, yeah, they'll
Yeah,
go through legal.
I don't
Make an exception to
wanna
the
make sure
limit
that-
on filling the lake. Yes.
Yeah, I don't wanna just say we're gonna do something here, but it needs to go through legal.
At the very end, at the very back is late fees. We're looking for approval for that as well, although we're not sure if IT will be able to implement those into our current software system. But just to have that ability in case we can make it happen, because
We'll make it happen.
late fees have been an issue, and I think we'll probably see late payments have been an issue, and I think it'll probably get worse after the fees go up, would be my guess. But
Problem with the application of late fees? Late fees. If you can get money out of those 43 people, you can't get it out of it right now.
Well, it's starting to narrow down there. Willie Burke there's been on the phone talking to folks, and compliance letters been sent out there. So yeah, we are getting a response back.
Good, good. Anything else?
Thank you.
Keep up the good work, guys. Yeah.
Good morning.
Morning, Chairman, rest of council. I'm here today to request that you sign off on a resolution for me to apply for a grant with the U.S. Department of Education. And specifically, this grant is only awarded to tribal entities. So it's not in competition with any of the public school systems, which I appreciate. I've been in contact with Indian Preference. I read the Strategic Economic Development Plan and contact with Joe Derglo and working with Patricia Hibbler. And so some allowable costs on this grant that I'd like to apply for are stipends or childcare or fuel support for students that are going into certificate programs. I'm using state data to identify our top future jobs. And so far, before I click submit, it looks like it's going to be technology and healthcare positions. Indian Preference has requested support with construction trades certificate programs, and she feels like that would support SCAHA and DHRD. And some other allowable costs that I'll include are tuition for the certificate programs. So in addition to SKC, the Missoula College of Technology has 88 online certificate programs that we could sign our students up for, and they're right around $3,000 a piece. And so then Patricia Hibbler had the idea to create a hub here so we could help them with devices and technology support and have a tutor in the room with them in case it's someone that's not technology savvy. And then include a program manager, and the supports for the stipends, they would have to either get a stipend or they could have the program pay for childcare and fuel support at Quicksilver. And the goal is 25 students per year. So that would be 125 through the whole program, 125 tribal members. So I'm asking permission for that, and I've sent the resolution on to Abby.
Five-year grant.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Len.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the council, and Michelle, thank you, and I support your request. But one of the questions that I've been meaning to ask you for some time now is, now that this administration is moving forward with closing the Department of Education, how does that impact your department? Have we identified any?
Yeah, so currently I don't have any Department of Education grants, so direct funding isn't an issue unless I'm not able to get funded for this grant. But the biggest hit that we're going to take is through, I have 3 grants that are personnel, and my biggest grant, 1.8 million in a year through SAMHSA. And we've already seen people, I've received letters from SAMHSA staff losing their jobs. So they email us before they leave. And so I've received that. So the impact is going to be what we're bringing into the school districts on the reservation.
Okay.
And what we're bringing in is us. It's helping kids connect to who they are as tribal people. And so, contracts for my curriculum developer, contracts for the knowledge keepers that we bring into the classrooms, the trip to the Salish Language Conference, or field trips out into our permanent homelands. Those are all grant funded.
Okay.
And so if we lose that funding, then the first thing I'm going to do is ask you for your guys' support. And then depending on where that goes, then we'll have to identify things that we can cut out. And ultimately, yes, this will affect our kids.
Okay, but it's not going to impact your staff. You're still going to be able to maintain your current staff.
No. So I have, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 staff members that are grant funded.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that, Michelle.
Yep.
To approve the resolution, second by Tom. All in favor?
Okay.
Tom?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Michelle, you reminded me of a request that we got. We were developing our relationship with the Glacier National Park Foundation.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a field trip up there hosted by them. part of the outcome there with the foundation is that they would like to host tribal youth to come up to the park and visit, stay, do different things. And so I was struggling trying to catch you. Sorry, I haven't until just now. I haven't responded back to them. They want to know a contact person. I just didn't know if that would be something that I would assume you'd be interested in facilitating.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to respond until I got your concurrence for that.
That sounds like something that would be perfect for the Mission Mountains Youth Crew. So we have 8 students that work on both the tribal side and the National Forest Service side. During the summer, it's a paid internship, and they do overnight stays. And it's not federal funding that's funding that program, so it's not in danger. So yeah, please forward it to me. And Miranda is the program manager for that, so I'll discuss it with her.
Yeah, that came to mind, the Mission Mountain Youth Crew. But then I thought, well, maybe there's, your other council you have, or there's other, Indian clubs or whatever within schools that might be able to finance them to go. I don't know. They seemed like they wanted to do something meaningful.
Is there funding available?
Well, they have funding.
Okay.
It's just how they would assume to just facilitate and, dedicate campsites with the Park Service, help guide, facilitate while they're there. I just don't know the extent of how much they would finance, but it seemed to me like they were able to hire a bus to come down here, pick up students, take them up there. They talked about that. So I don't know. I'm guessing they might be able to finance the whole thing. I don't know if they pay for chaperone costs or things of that nature, but it looked pretty wide open.
Okay.
Cookie was the main leader in it, but Cookie Cobell.
Oh, okay.
She lives up in Kalispell, but she's a Blackfeet tribal member, and she's on the board.
Okay. Yeah.
Park Conservancy.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Okay.
Jennifer?
Thank you for coming in. Thank you, Michelle, for being so great at all the grants that you're doing and how successful you are getting grants and providing really wonderful services. So thank you for that. So that just reminded me of something I want to say before I forget, because I think it would be a good idea in today's political climate, because we have to ask questions like Glenn asked, and we don't, and the truth is, like, none of us really know.
Yeah.
Who knows what's going to be in the papers tomorrow? Who would have thought a professional wrestling lady would be in charge of the Department of Education?
Yeah.
Anyway, I just think it would be a good idea if, now that we have a communications officer, if we have language that we can give to disseminate widely with the contact information for all of our congressional team. So tribal members or our allies can contact them on our behalf and help us lobby for legislation and policies that are important to us. Because when you hear from people, it does make a difference. And I can certainly say that being on tribal council, when people reach out to me personally, it makes a difference. It helps move the needle for whatever. So I just think we should do that. Have some draft, a letter or a message that people can send if they want to do that on all of our issues or some of our issues.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Anything else for Michelle? Some technical work.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Morning. We're going to take 5 minutes and then we'll have Lisa. Lisa and crew, welcome.
Good morning. Thank you. Good morning. The reason we're here today is about 3 years ago, under the tribe's resolution 2194, we tried to establish a couple of pilot programs under facilities and maintenance to provide employment opportunities for tribal members who wanted one. One of the opportunities that we provided was a floating position with the culture committees where we had a maintenance tech move into a position where they did the custodial work, the minor maintenance, and then also we did an MOA with a memorandum of agreement with the culture committees that they could also help with some of the cultural activities. And so that was a successful program. They actually ended up taking the caretaker on under their own budgets. And this program that we currently have right now is for greeters and door monitors at the facility here, plus the old complex. And what we have currently is an org chart for additional positions, but we'd like to expand that so that we can enter into a memorandum of agreement with DHRD to provide on-the-job training for them to self-promote within that position so they could end up becoming part of a security team for the buildings. And so that's why we're here today, is to see if that's an option that the tribes would like to pursue. With talking with Leroy just through the hallway and stuff, we kind of learned that he could use some more people to help out at some of his other buildings. So we thought this might be an opportunity for us to work together to achieve more goals and enhance the services. So it would allow a person who was a greeter to come in and sit at the front desk and get familiar with the layout. They would be able to walk through the facility, and if they noticed any issues or concerns, they would do some of those things for the facilities and maintenance department that they currently do, but also enhance it so that they could be provided training with Leroy so that they could become a security officer trainee, which would be a promotion from that current position. And once they completed all of that training, they would go through a monitoring stage with Leroy where they could then advance to an officer position. And they would be able to go outside of these areas. He's specified 4 different areas that he would like to have the people go. 2, we've asked that they stay here. We have one in this building, one in the old complex, but also expand so that they can go to the warming center and help there. And then also the inn in Polson, he's needing some assistance there. So we thought if we could come together and figure out how to work with each other, that this might be an opportunity that the tribe would be interested in. So that's why we're coming to get approval for that MOA. And if we get that approval, we'd like to change the org chart so that we can update those position descriptions to allow for that self-promotion opportunity for employees.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the council. I look at this as a step forward in trying to accomplish creating our own security department on its own. I think it's important that we do have our own security department, and I think that needs to be reflective in our next proposed reorg chart, and looking at what it's going to cost to fund that. This is something that's been discussed by us in the past, and I appreciate you guys bringing this forward, because I think this is a start to that. Because we have so many departments in here within the tribal organization, and I know it kind of gets cumbersome for department heads to try to keep those budgets just for security staff. So I would like to just see us move forward and trying to create another security department on its own. But yeah, this is a great project. I would.
That's kind of our goal. We had done that with the caretakers, and they had actually taken that on through their department, and it's a pilot program. So we're hoping to get through this fiscal year and answer some of those questions for you and for Leroy, so that he would be able to come back, because that's something that he strongly would like to do as well.
Go ahead, Carol.
Yeah, I think with things getting so much more intense now, we got to be very on high alert, I think, because people are so nervous right now about everything. And so I think the more we can do to keep people feeling like okay, it won't be so tense around here, but I just think it's just totally to a different level with ICE and having to have a tribal ID, and I'm like, oh my gosh. So I think whatever we need to do, I'm like Glenn, we need to beef it up and make sure people feel safe.
Jennifer?
Yeah, I agree also, and I think it just helps the security of the building when you know somebody's gonna be walking through it. I had my wallet stolen from my office by someone. And so, and it wasn't someone who worked here, but there were times, in some of the positions that I've worked for, like in the social service positions, where someone came in and they were on drugs, obviously on drugs, and I just thought, you don't know what someone's gonna do when they're on drugs. Then I think people would not be as likely to come in if they knew there was security walking around, rather than just, office workers sitting at their desks. They feel like they can come in and do whatever, and the guy on drugs, he came into my office and he grabbed one of my pens and scribbled on some paper and then took my scissors and stabbed it, and then he left. Well, that could have been me. I don't know what he was thinking. And anyway, so I think it's a great idea. And like Carol said, I think a lot of anti-Indian people are emboldened by the current administration. And it's emboldened them somehow. And I think it would be good if we have stronger security presence.
Another, just a side comment here, and this is for Leroy. Leroy, I think it's really critical that you continue on with the active shooter training. That is so critical, especially for a big organization such as ours, to try to keep that going annually of it, and maybe even quarterly, but I know the last couple trainings that you put on, I heard a lot of good comments on that, and it's just something that's needed. So just wanted to mention that to you. I don't expect a response, but I just think you need to know that, you just need to know how important that is, and you're doing a good job at keeping those types of trainings.
Good, Leroy.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, and the rest of the council. To answer your question, Len, I did get asked by, I think is it Larry Pitts, the dentist? Is it? I just know it's Pitts. I just can't remember his first name. I did CPR for them. I helped Ellen Caphammer, and he was asking how to do active shooter training in their building, because he said he took it when we did at Tweagle. I said, yeah, everybody goes to the first one, then they always want to come back the second training, refresher course where they work. I said, being a 3-story building, that's kind of hard. I said, but we also need Joe on board to, okay, if we plan it 2 months down the road, 3 months, whatever down the road, close it for that day, and then maybe send everybody to Mission, and then do the following day in Mission, and then everybody that needs their medical needs or whatever to Polson. So, but I do have a team of active shooters. I think there is 10 of us that went through the training at Tweagle, went through LSU, but I think I need to bring you guys kind of like a budget, because there's things that we need. We don't have the equipment, all the equipment for the active shooter. IT, because I have 2 people in IT that took that training to become an instructor, was able to get a shot box. And that's just so we don't have a firearm in a building, with shooting blanks. That shot box does the same thing. It's just you plug it in, and then you have a remote, and you can it makes a sound just like a handgun inside a building. That alone, for one, is $2,500. It's cheaper to get them where you buy 2 of them. But we do have a budget. I just haven't had, I guess, the time to come in to present everything to you. But I think maybe if that's something I can do, I can get on the agenda with my active shooter team and present it, because that was another thing that we did at housing, and they want to do it every maybe make it, like you said, a yearly. And I know other people would like to see it, but just trying to figure out what direction does council want me and my instructor team, how do you guys want us to proceed? Is this gonna be, do we go through one department head? Like here, how many department heads is there? Is this something that we have to go through council first to get permission to do it? You know, how do we maneuver through everything to get this training done for everybody? Like you said, annually, I think it should be maybe every 8 months, you know, in between half and then a year. 8 months would be fine because you get a lot of new people that come on. Some people move different jobs. Just my thought on it. Thank you.
On the memorandum of agreement?
Yes, and also for the org chart change, just to kind of highlight this, these would be the positions that we would offer for self-promotion into security. We do have 4, these would still continue to be the greeters and monitors. One thing that's kind of hampered what we've done is we've asked for background check on those positions. And so I think we want to back off from that so that we can offer more employment opportunities for people, because that background check has caused some people not to apply. We've been picking them off of emergency hire because I know council said, hey, you know, if someone wants to come in for a week or whatever, we'd like to be able to offer them that. So I think that's kind of limited it. So I'm hoping that if we can just have them sit at the front desk, they're not walking through the offices with anyone that would be an elder or a child, that we could just back off of that, but they would be required to have the background check to advance through the security positions.
Carol.
I appreciate that. And also, just a heads up, you know, if your monitor sees somebody outside and it's like a little before the doors are supposed to open, just let them in. We heard this morning that there was an elder waiting outside, and it was a little after 10 o'clock. It was on the late day opening, and he stood outside and kept ringing the doorbell. I mean, that should never happen. If you see somebody out there, just let them inside. Just give your employees a heads up. And also, I have an individual who had graduated from drug court quite a while ago, and she's put in for every job she possibly can. So I did give Patricia her number. Really like to see her have a chance, but I know I shouldn't be saying that, but there's a lot of people that need chances.
But we choose off of the emergency hire list. So if the application's in there and we don't have that requirement, it wouldn't limit us from being able to hire someone that wants that opportunity.
Carol, I do have one member on staff right now at the warming center. The background check is only 5 years. So it just goes back 5 years. So if they're good, whatever their charges were a while ago, it's not going to show up. And it doesn't hurt for them just to apply for the background and see what happens. You know, I'm like you, everybody does change. You know, you look at me 25 years ago, I'm not the person I am today. Right? We all change, we all make mistakes, we all learn. That's how I am personally. If they make changes and they want to better themselves, and if they can pass the background for the requirement for this job, I'll give them a shot, and then it's in their hands.
To support the memorandum of agreement and addition of the positions in the org chart. Motion by Carol. Second by Lynn. All in favor? Unanimous.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Lisa. Thank you, Leroy. Out of regular and into exec. Tricia, can you state exactly what the motion should be?
So I believe the motion is to
Move Carrie into interim director for ECS effective January 27th and allow for, I'm going to call it extra duty pay. I don't know exactly what it's called for in the, pardon me, incentive pay to begin October 27th, 2024.
Make the motion.
Carrie, October 27th, you were doing the job when Jeannie left you. What day was that?
Jeannie left, September 30th was her last day.
So why aren't we doing it from October 1? Is it the time frame?
Based
It's
on,
gotta be 90
based on
days.
language in the ordinance.
So if we waive it,
Guess you could waive it beyond 90 days.
well, I think it's fair because she's been doing the job, right?
It's a very valid and reasonable point.
I think due to the fact that she has been doing the actual job, that's when I will do it is,
Well, the incentive pay, it's not defined by the ordinances.
not if you waive it.
And so that you wouldn't have to waive that ordinance for the incentive pay. I don't think, would you, Tricia? You know?
But is that the proper,
I
Well,
think
it's all a variance of the ordinance that we're doing. We're going into variance world, so
Yeah.
it's whatever we say it is.
I think you as council can make the decision when you would like to see that start. Jeannie's last day was the 30th of September. So it would make sense if you would like, if that's the wish of council, to start it on October 1.
well, I just look back to everybody else we've done. We've made sure that people have been covered for the time that they have served in those positions. And I don't want to treat Carrie anything different than anybody else's, is why I'm feeling like it needs to be done.
Yeah, and so the motion then is put in position effective date January 27th, as is stated in the letter, with the back pay, however it's defined from, what is it, October 1st?
As far as the pay scale, it wouldn't be what Jeannie exited it at. It would be the entry level of a department head in that old PD. And so the incentive pay would be equal to that position's entry pay for that time of duty from October 1st to January 27th.
That being your motion, Carol? Motion by Carol. Tom? All in favor? The motion is to install Carrie in the interim position as of January 27th with an incentive pay back to October 1st at the level we just talked about. Motion. Second by Tom. All in favor?
Thank you guys all.
Thank you. say good morning. You have 10 minutes of morning left. Welcome.
Ordered lunch for it.
No rush.
Good morning, Chairman and the rest of the council. We saved the best for last. You're going to enjoy this. This is quite beautiful. So we're going to set it up. It is a video that showcases the work that social services is doing in collaboration with a couple other departments. And it's a video. And we're just going to let it play.
Gezegd, tegemoet, there are children. We love them. We're going to teach them.
We see our children as our future. And so for our future to be thriving, then our kids need to be thriving. And so we do everything we can to support them as we're growing up, to help them on their path so that they're good humans at the end of the day. And that's the most important thing, is good humans are good for our communities.
They are basically our 401k. That's our future, you know, that's who's going to be perpetuating our lifestyle in the future. And I want to do my best to be a part of that.
Before we were colonized, we lived all together, and that was a beautiful way of life to live. It's like the saying, like it takes a village, right? That's how we've lived. That's how we've survived. It's a way of ensuring that our way of life is passed on. It's a way of ensuring that everything continues, our traditions, our culture, our language, everything is continued. If we don't ensure that the next generation has it, then our way of life ceases to continue.
If we don't know what other departments or programs are doing, then we can't braid, right? And so we just talked about the silos, how You know, everybody's doing their job with their heads down and getting their work done, but we're missing opportunities that could make things more simple for the people that we're helping. And so we started having those conversations, and then we get together every week and talk about the families that we're supporting, so that we know that there's follow through, but also we might have ideas that somebody else didn't think of. So the more people at the table, the more opportunities there are to provide the support. If we're not talking to each other and we're not having those meetings and sharing resources, then we're doing a disservice to our communities.
It lets the person, it lets the family, it lets the individual know that there's more than one entity trying to help. In our dialogue with somebody, there's always mention of another department, another avenue that if this grant can't work, we can talk with these people. So the families know that there's multiple eyes on them.
At the Tribal Defender's Office, I think generally that if we're helping parents and we're helping them heal, then that ultimately is going to help children. I mean, my belief is that helping parents is what ultimately helps children, and children have the right to be raised by their parent and to be raised by a healthy parent, and we'll try to support that as much as we can.
We try and keep the child in the home whenever possible, while we try and do voluntary services as much as possible with the family. It's recognizing that with appropriate services, the underlying safety issues can often be addressed. And how do you get people to engage in those services and give those wraparound services? So it's not just focusing on the kid, it's focusing on what are the needs of the family and trying to get those services to the entire family to help reunify the child if the child has had to be removed, or to help keep the child in the home if we can keep the child safe in the home with those supportive services.
There's a service probably for anything that you need. There's a service within the tribe. And if you have any sort of need, especially if you're for families working with social services or families working with DHRD, they are well versed in all the services that are available. So it is quite amazing coming from the organizations outside of the tribe and seeing what they have to work with in comparison to the tribe. It is astounding what the tribe has and how many programs they have to assist their members. It is astounding.
A long time ago, everybody in the village worked together, and that's why we're surviving. We need to teach our kids our culture and our ways, so they'll be able to step up when we're gone.
We're like Kasanka, you know, like we're family. You don't not help family. You know what I mean? Like those are your people, you know, and when they're gone, who's gonna help their family? You know, you gotta keep that going.
I believe in the strength and the beauty of our people. And I believe that we just need to help people heal, and that we're gonna be healthy, well, and resilient, and our kids are gonna grow up to be proud of who they are, tribal citizens, tribal members.
Chance to come in and talk to us like the other department heads, did you? I don't recall that you came in. We need to schedule, or is that this time right now? The rest of them came in and gave their report on.
If they did, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know if she's prepared to do that right now. I probably have notes, but Yeah, I was just wondering, because I've missed a lot of days and I was just wondering.
Points, but I'm not ready to do that today, maybe next week. This video was paid for and produced through Casey Families, which we have a 5-year agreement with, which we renewed again this year. And one of the people that was in the background that produced this was Vi Sherman. She's related to Jimmy through the Matt family and also to myself. And I think that it's a beautiful film. You won't see Marcy and I in it necessarily, as you noticed, but it showcases collaborative relationships within social services. Marcy and I are in the background, but we didn't actively take a part in the filming of this particular film. And so we came in here today to ask to be able to release it into the community and on media. And that's why I did not come to do org chart. I have a resignation on one of the grants that I had put in there. And so I am in the background looking at how and where I'm going to move that grant within my divisions. And so that's why I have pulled the org chart again, so I can work on that. And I apologize, that's a last minute notice, but that person has taken a really phenomenal job and I have to support her in her professional development. And now I have to make another decision on where we're going to place that grant.
Questions to releasing the video? Patricia, do you want something more than that?
No questions, comments about it, anything?
Bringing the video in. It's gorgeous.
People. That's the other thing, not 60-something-year-olds like myself. So thank you. Have a wonderful weekend.
Stay warm. Said. And we have the update from the Tribal Advisory Enrollment Committee. Ethan, you're sitting at the desk. You wanting to start?
We have, I guess the update is we've got some recommendations that nobody even signed off on yet because we want to look at some data. Let me see if I can pull that up. Just go. So the report of the Tribal Member Advisory Group regarding enrollment is language, culture, and traditions are the foundation of our tribes and are the things that distinguish us as Salish, Xanka, and Kalispe. The optimal long-term vision is that our people will regain our languages, culture, and traditions, and membership in the tribes will not be defined by our arbitrary blood quantum. Resolution 21-085 set forth that the executive officer and culture committees shall facilitate the defining of traditional and cultural activities, values, teaching of native languages, and integration of both into the daily lives of the reservation residents. The development of annual plans with participation from the tribal membership should clearly describe how these efforts will be made and identify the resources needed to accomplish them. The advisory group has fully discussed the following topics in closed working meetings in August and September 2024. Meetings were held with Salish, Kalispe, and Xanka elders in September, In September and October, 3 public meetings were held to solicit comments. The proposals of the advisory group are as follows. 1, it is recommended that CSKT maintain the present requirement of at least 1/4 blood quantum of Salish, Kasanka, and or Kalispe. The primary advantage is this preserves the bloodlines of the tribes. The next advantage is there is no significant increase in membership. That membership will decline. The possibility of a major decline, however, is unlikely because coming generations may vote for changes in eligibility. The advisory group acknowledges that some of its members and some public comments favor descendancy-based criteria. The advisory group does not feel descendancy-based criteria is beneficial in the long term for 2 major reasons. First, it does not promote cultural identity and tribal affiliation. And second, there is not a compelling belief that the current enrolled population is in serious decline. Let me see here. One, the advisory group suggests that consideration may be given to adjusting records for blood quantum of members at the time the CSKT Constitution was adopted and reflected 4/4 quantum of all such members. The primary advantage is this will address the alleged errors and inaccuracies of blood quantum in a fair and equitable manner. It also solves some of the situations of split families affected by other tribal blood and by the minimum 1/4 blood quantum passed in 1960. A projection of growth in membership should be undertaken to evaluate the impacts of such change. Generations after 1935 will have increased blood quantum, and this may result in descendants becoming eligible for membership. The primary disadvantage is blood quantum by itself does not ensure cultural identity or tribal affiliation, and this is not a long-term solution for sustaining the membership of the tribes. B, in addition to 1 and A, the advisory group suggests the consideration may be given to reverting to the practice of counting all tribes' blood or from specific tribes such as Salish and Kunakha speaking tribes in recorded blood quantum for membership eligibility. If recommendation A was implemented, this proposal would benefit current and future generations, which are increasingly affected by out of marriage with other tribes and with non-tribal people. A demographic study should be undertaken to generate data and on the presence of other tribes' blood in the membership. The primary advantage is the generations after 1953 will have increased blood quantum and may result in descendants becoming eligible for membership. The primary disadvantage is that blood quantum by itself does not ensure cultural identity or tribal affiliation, and this is not a long-term solution for sustaining the membership of the tribes. The advisory group recommends socioeconomic study and analysis of current membership, assessment of cultural identity and tribal affiliation, and evaluation of tribal resources. Such studies should be completed and provided to the complete prior to proposing any change in enrollment eligibility. The primary advantage is that a study will project impacts and provide time to plan and strategize. With decisions being made on data and not politics or personal interests, a study will also provide information to address beliefs that the current membership is not adequately served. I just want to see if there's somebody that is in the waiting room. Okay, I'll continue. The advisory group recommends a review and audit of enrollment records. If recommendations A and or B are implemented, some of the corrections may result in people becoming eligible for membership. The primary advantage is to ensure and confirm the integrity of the enrollment process. The primary disadvantage is any corrections may result in persons being disenrolled. An independent entity should oversee this review. The other one. Right here, listening session summary. Did you want to check that out? Did you? 11. Listening sessions on tribal enrollment. They happened at Pablo, Elmo, and Arlee between September 24th and October 1st. and the purpose is to gather community input on potential changes to tribal enrollment criteria. Topics discussed is blood quantum, whether to maintain or eliminate blood quantum requirements for enrollment, concerns about the potential for self-termination of the tribe if blood quantum remains the sole criterion, and suggestions to consider other factors such as cultural knowledge and participation in addition to blood quantum. Split families, addressing the issue of split families where some members are enrolled and others are not due to different blood quantum calculations. Proposals to amend enrollment criteria to include first-generation descendants of enrolled members. Counting other tribal blood, whether to count blood from other tribes, and if so, which tribes. Suggestions to count blood from other Salish and Kootenai tribes or from any federally recognized tribe. Lineal descendancy. Discussions of whether lineal descendancy, enrollment based on direct descendant from an enrolled ancestor, should be considered. Concerns that lineal descendancy could lead to a significant increase in enrollment and strain on tribal resources. Impact on resources. Concerns about the potential impact of increased enrollment on tribal resources such as per capita payments and access to hunting and fishing rights. Suggestions to explore ways to increase resources to accommodate potential new enrollees. Cultural preservation, emphasis on the importance of cultural knowledge and participation in tribal identity. Suggestions to incorporate cultural assessments or requirements into enrollment criteria. Additional issues raised. Concerns about the influence of colonialism on tribal government and enrollment practices. Calls for greater transparency and accountability from tribal leadership. Suggestions to improve communication and outreach to tribal members living off the reservation. Concerns about the potential for disenfranchisement and loss of tribal identity among younger generations. Overall sentiment, there was a wide range of opinions expressed on the various topics discussed. Many participants expressed a strong desire to maintain the tribe's cultural identity and sovereignty. There was also a general sense of urgency to address the issue of declining enrollment and the potential for self-termination. The committee was tasked with compiling the input received and submitting recommendations to the Tribal Council for further consideration. The specific details and arguments presented varied across 3 listening sessions, reflecting the diverse perspectives and concerns of the different communities on the reservation. Back to the options that we were looking at. Here.
I would like to invite any members of
I think before we do that, we'll ask for questions from council if there are some. From council or remarks from council, we'll definitely invite any member to give the whatever statement they want to make. Good.
You can make it done. Hear me okay?
We can, thank you.
Tribal Council. When I signed up for the enrollment committee, I thought it was formed to get people signed up to express their opinions. This didn't happen for everyone. Not all opinions have been expressed. First of all, some people wrote letters and didn't get on the committee. Some met the deadline and came to the first meeting. Then they were barred after that by I don't know who. I never voted to bar anyone. Some didn't get in at all. One person had to argue at the door to get in the second meeting. The proof of meeting the deadline, the letter deadline, was on their phone. Other people didn't apply and then they got in the committee. At the first meeting, someone was asking questions like, how many people want to enroll descendants? A few people raised their hands. When asked how many people wanted to count other Indian blood, most of the people raised their hands, including myself. All federally recognized tribes in the US. I realized after a couple of meetings later, this wasn't their plan. The plan was just to count certain blood from the West and Canada. People have told me Indian blood is Indian blood. People want to leave enrollment as it is. A few people raised their hands. Some of us attended meetings and got into groups a couple of times. There were different ideas proposed, like enrolled descendants, lower blood quantum below 1/4, enrolled split families, rebase. I'm not sure what that meant. Make everyone a full blood and count other Indian blood for the sister tribes. I didn't know what that was either. Without voting on it, citizenry was added to the list. I wasn't sure what that was. Some of the committee members came to one meeting, some 2 or 3, and some never came to any meetings. Some that did attend meetings got discouraged and felt they weren't listened to and never came back to any more meetings. I think the tribal council had good intentions to have a committee formed and get different ideas, but it didn't seem to work that way. Discouraging is the word, and more divide. I attended the listening meetings, Elmo, SKC, and Arlee. I listened when we met with some of the elders in Elmo and Mission. People were saying, why are we talking about this again? We already voted on this before. Why the urgency of changing enrollment? And they said they thought it was a personal agenda. An elder in Mission said, leave enrollment as it is. Next thing, there will be another group here and another group asking to change things. Some other comments by our membership was, I'm going along with the elders. Leave enrollment alone. Lack of resources to care for all members. Leave as is. Elder payments might go away and some have limited income. Healthcare is not efficient for our membership. Many members can't afford health insurance and depend solely on tribal health and care that is limited, and that care is limited. Any changes need to be decided by the entire membership and not any one committee. Other comments I read and heard while listening was lack of information when asking questions about enrollment and family trees. Another comment, the tribes need to go back to our cultural and traditional ways and quit adopting so many non-member laws and values. Start by hiring more enrolled members, CSKT. The tribe needs to take care of the current members. I hope the tribal council can get all the comments that were submitted. There are just some of the comments. These are just some of the comments of the membership. We have almost 8,000 members, so everyone should have a voice. The elders and young people and the whole membership should be the top priority here. I have talked to a lot of people and they have stated to leave enrollment as it is. I will go along with that, leave enrollment as it is. Dorothy Finley, Squeaky. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I'll give you guys a copy.
Anybody else want to make a statement? Go ahead, Lois. Come to the microphone, please. Okay.
Microphone okay to come to me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
What does it mean that from time to time the tribal council can correct membership? What does that mean? I don't know. What does that mean to you, council?
I believe it's given the research into the lineage of the person, and if the lineage has been misstated, that council has the right to accept the correction.
Okay, so that means, It doesn't mean anything beyond that, like if you felt somehow split families should be brought on, that you as a council through ordinance could bring them on?
There is a possibility of the council having the right to enact an ordinance dealing with enrollment. I don't know that we have beyond the ones that you utilized in the study that you look at, and those being the only things in place, those would dictate what is and couldn't be done.
And my final question is to both you and Tom McDonald. Have you guys pretty much told your constituents that you guys would correct the split family issue and enroll those that were affected by that split family change, or the change in 59? Did you guys tell your constituents that you would change that and enroll split family members?
I have never said that to anybody, but I have said that I would ask that the issue come up to look at enrollment and to pursue enrollment in the best ability of the tribe to maintain its sovereignty. And with that, I will say, to maintain our sovereignty, it's my personal belief, not council's, my personal belief that we have to stand behind the fact that we're Aboriginal, and we have to defend that Aboriginality in every drop of blood we have. That's my personal position. I don't know about Representative McDonald.
Well, that just brought up a question. I thought I was done with my questions, but that's a good point you make. What does maintaining our Aboriginal characteristic, our Aboriginal integrity look like to you, Mike? What would that look like?
It's that anybody that has an ancestor that was here before colonization has the right to say, I have ancestry from before colonization. I am part of the Aboriginal group that's here.
How about you, Tom? Did you pretty much assure your constituents when you were out campaigning that you would solve the split family issue by enrolling the split family? And specifically, did you say that to Dan Jackson, who works at Walmart?
I was just going to mention Dan Jackson. Yeah. Dan is, one of those families. Yeah, Dan comes from a split family. Years ago when we did the Constitution Review Committee, I was on that committee. And that was one of the central issues that we had, was trying to fix the split family issue. That being said, it would be like, here's one person that was born on the reservation and another person who was born off the reservation. One's enrolled and one's not. That's a split family. And they same parents, they might be just 1 year apart. Just those kind of limitations were super sensitive to us at that time. And that was one of the origins for us trying to do the constitutional referendum to do something about enrollment back then, 30 years ago. Quite a while ago. But Dan has always been a proponent of that, and he always brings it up all the time. Every time I see him, he's a champion trying to fix that particular issue. I know that. But I don't reference that on the campaign trail at all. I'm looking at Jennifer Len. I don't remember that we had much of a discussion on split family at all. I think it was just the long-term sustainability of enrollment and the fact that blood quantum is not something that was ever practiced until Washington, D.C. brought it upon us. And that as a sovereign nation, we need to determine, not with any outside influence of some blood quantum thing, that we determine our own citizenship within our tribes. That's what a sovereign nation does. And so that's the kind of thing that I've always been a proponent of, whether or not it's an action of this governing body that's up here, or it's gone through a referendum. I support either one of those, but I can tell you, being a mathematician, that our current enrollment policy will tend us down no matter what we do, right? If we don't change anything, it'll just always tend on a downward projection. That's where it was when we did our last enrollment study. And we brought in DCI or wherever they were, and they were doing the projections. And the dissolution rate was substantial. So, if you want to learn it, you can always kind of kick the can down. But I did make the promise in my campaign that I would try to address enrollment in my 4 years during my tenure here. And that I would bring it up, and I'd hold to my word that I would bring it up, and that's what I did. So you can say this initiative right now is probably because of me, because I'm fulfilling my commitment in my campaign to deal with overall enrollment, which you could say split family is one of those symptoms or one of those issues that's out there. So that's, Lois, that's the best I can give to you.
Okay, I just have a final comment. People throughout the world who establish who they accept as their membership. So would both of you be respectful if the majority of us feel that if you've diluted out to the point where you're completely absorbed into dominant society and you have no connection whatsoever other than maybe you're enrolled, but you're not connected in any way, shape, or form to the people of these tribes. Do you guys agree, and would you respect that the majority of us are not willing to open up to lineal descendancy to the extent that probably some of you guys think, is Aboriginal, or however you say it? I believe we're Indigenous. I think a lot of the new findings keep showing that we've been here a lot longer than just being Aboriginal. And so if the majority of us say we do not want any council people to move forward on this because we think that that would be the fastest way to totally dilute our people to where we wouldn't even be able to stand on our culture, language, and traditions. Right now, there's just a small esoteric group of us who still sweat, who still practice into the night, who still practice the Indigenous ways. And because we're the minority, that part of our being Salish, Pondere, and Kootenai is not being transmitted to the future generations. It's people like you and Mike, Tom, who just because you feel you're Aboriginal, therefore you belong and you should be allowed all the, benefits of being tribal members. You guys feel that way, but the majority of us out here say there has to be more to it than that, because we have the lived experience. We know what it's like, and we know what our people have had to endure, which has brought us to this state to where we have 99 full bloods left. That is sad. So I'm all for looking at the people who identify and do everything in their power to make sure that we have the cultural and linguistic integrity moving forward. Because in the future, that's all we have to stand on. We're all going to be blonde hair and blue eyed in about 75 years. But if we're going to be led by people who don't care and after 5:30 go home to their white lives, that's not going to serve us at all. And so to me, moving forward, I would hope that you, the both of you, and some of the others you may have influenced up there to kind of think like you, really understand that the only way that we live on as Salish and Kootenai people is through our culture, language, and our identities. A lot of our youth are so impoverished they can't even get out to the ceremonies. That's a sad state of affairs. I had some wood hauled out so that I could have it for a sweat house. I got in trouble. We can only use the wood from the elders program for our immediate homes. That shouldn't be the case. We're trying hard here to survive. And if you guys are going to go against the grain, then I don't want any more like you guys on our rolls. Okay, I've taken up too much time. That's just my thoughts and feelings.
Any other statements?
Hello, Amelia Adams. I guess for me, it's just like I joined the group or the committee just to kind of get an idea of everybody's thoughts and where we were at with like enrollment and if there was like a push to even make a change or not. But it's just kind of sad because the turnout of the public meetings, there wasn't very many people that attended those meetings. The public comment period that was advertised for several months, and we just didn't receive enough feedback. So in my mind, it's like maybe just this little group of people have interest in it, and it's not that big of an issue for the rest of the membership, is kind of what I feel at this point. I mean, we have so much going on in the world right now. It's like, geez, we don't even know if the tribe's gonna survive with all this federal funding and President Trump and President Musk, I guess. But it's just I don't know. I just like the interest wasn't there for me to say like, oh yeah, let's vote on it. Let's make a change. Just because like I don't know if the membership just has so many other issues going on, but just the public feedback wasn't there, just in my mind, to come up with a decision. Such a big decision like this, I guess. And my dad wasn't able to be here today, so he told me to speak up for him a little bit, but he would be for like a review of like our enrollment records and just looking at if there's needs to be any blood quantum corrections or anything like that. My dad's Tony Adams, if you guys don't know him. He would be for that, but going back and reviewing records just to see if there was any inaccuracies with that. So that's what he wanted to say. But other than that, he's been a big proponent of just kind of leaving it as is right now because he thinks our numbers are strong right now. We're 7,000 plus. I mean, compared to I guess our relatives to the west, the Kalispel tribe, they have a membership of 476 or 475 members, and they have no interest of changing their enrollment. So that's kind of what his thoughts are, is like there's not a big push over there to change anything. And you know, I'm always showing him stuff. Oh, well, the Spokane tribe did this. They included other Indian blood, but he's not interested at this time, I guess. And then another thing that like I was thinking about, maybe just our younger generation, they're just not having kids as much as they used to. I mean, I have 3 boys. They range from 20 to 24 years old, and they're not interested in having kids right now. That's just not a thought. And I think there's 20 grandkids in my family, and you know, I think my niece is the only one that has a kid. So it's just that younger generation, they're not there. So I don't know. I always think our younger generation, they're really smart kids. So maybe in like 10 years or even 5 years down the road, maybe let them be the ones to make the change. Because, you know, I did attend the the Salish and the Kootenai, their public sessions, and they didn't feel the sense of urgency, I guess. And so I was raised to always listen to our elders and respect our elders, and you know, and if the time's not right, it's not right now. Maybe later on down the road, I guess. Just my thoughts.
Ethan, Ethan and then Dan.
Well, it's funny because everybody I talk to, my generation that are tribal members, they think something has to be done now. And that's not just for enrollment, but for our people and our land. And most of us signed up to be on this committee to prevent something from happening. That was their motivation, was to prevent something. And only a few of us signed up for the committee with some solutions to the perceived problem. And the way I look at it is right now, like the tribe has an opportunity to utilize this teaching moment. This is an opportunity I'm looking at. But anyway, I'll just go on with my little essay. It's troubling to me when white America is causing division across Turtle Island, and we want to further alienate and exclude. And this land is our stronghold. And when America becomes racist and commences to target and deport brown people as illegal immigrants, and when Trump wants to shut people out and lock people out, I want us to be an embassy of light. I wish to give us all the compassion and enduring acceptance to those who would otherwise be casted out to the wolves, hung out to dry. So many of our people have had to endure an uncertain future, and the future is now. This is what our predecessors were preparing for, and this is what has culminated from their efforts are meant for. Now is the time to call our loved ones home to the stronghold, to help us clean and tend to our lands, seeded and unseeded. You and the individual, that those people are not the problem. And I'm talking about like addicts, alcoholics, and people that, you know, are outcasted. We have a lot of outcasted people, and that's how a lot of people feel. A lot of people tell me that they're not their problem, but I'm here to make it their problem. We currently have a very unnatural death rate. And I shouldn't have to tell you that. We Indian people of this reservation are suffering and losing too many beautiful people far too early, way ahead of their time. And we also lose them to other systems of genocide, prisons, and all that stuff. I'm focused on fortifying ourselves from future incursions. The morality of our tribe is low, and that's because nobody actually got up in front of them who was truly part of them as relations to tell them that we don't have to live like that anymore and don't have to be stymied. And I believe in effects from the cause, which most people seem to not be able to connect. We have a connection to this land, and that connection draws them here too. No matter the force or attraction, everyone's heart lies in the stronghold. We know the connection well, and I felt it all my life. Have it any which way you want, but including any other Indian blood from these tribal members who were born between 75 and 2019 will boost morale, save lives, and during the time of uncertainty. Because we need human capital, and there is no resource greater than human resource and human capital, especially when we must be strengthening our bonds. Doing nothing now is a knee-jerk reaction and has always been the position of the CSKT people, except only after the lawyers advise them otherwise. The standard do nothing now knee-jerk reaction will adversely affect the tribe as a whole because we will be missing out on a valuable teaching moment because we will have the tribe's attention when we need the tribe's attention the most. We can emphasize optimal and efficient as a whole, where we can solve our tribal members' problems with their identity crisis, with their destitute mentality, because far too often the tribe is too busy for the Indians. The IRA self-government system promotes cutthroat capitalism, but equally combined with tyranny, and this is because the tribe fails to elect the most optimal, most efficient way to implement programs with the right personnel. If that weren't the case, then we wouldn't have pure drinking water for all the homes. We wouldn't have clear-cut reservation. We sell resources for less than market value and then buy it back for more than what it is worth. And if we keep this up, then our lands may not be able to sustain life. So like I said, the future is now. Now is the flood, and our stronghold is this reservation. In this corporate universe, they have the rank system where our workers are not ranked according to their devotion to their tribe or their character or how well they do their job. We tribal members are conditioned to know that they are expendable and that they will get the exact same thing they always get no matter how much of their precious time and energy they give. In order to justify the position, our tribe should have a system where your reward is correlated to the effort that you put into the tribe. By including other Indian blood will positively affect the Indian of this tribe as it will light a fire under their asses. It will allow leadership to create a collective cohesive force to stand up, pay attention, and be vigilant. And both members and new members will pay attention and adhere to the directions put forth by the leadership. That will achieve one heart, where we put the focus on protecting what little resources we have left and to make it through these next 4 years. miscarriage of justice suffered by the Indian people of this reservation. We have too many people who live here, who hate the tribes, who hate Indians, and we have to look at the quality and the real genuine materials and supplies that two-way street. Frontier America brought different forms of commerce with new products that came here from all over the world. I watch Indian people confronted by Caucasians who are ignorant of the native contributions to progress. Now we live in a corporate America during late stage capitalism. Corporations and their shareholders shape this country. They're all about optimal peak performance and maximizing profits. The way to do it is send people out to generate something that we can bring back in and throw in with other clans to have a cache full of goods that will then be distributed throughout the whole of the tribe in order to get the people through the winter. Let me see. Actually consider why I feel this way and about my positioning as a member of our community. And it is a fact that I align with the traditionalists, and it is because a lot of people are concerned with the direction of the tribe is going now. It's because of the fact that I truly have ownership of the land and the resources, and that I feel like it's being mismanaged. And if individual tribal members are not entitled to any of the federal funded programs, then what is an individual tribal member entitled to? When the U.S. or any special interest group want to give goods and payments to the local Indians, and why does it have to get stepped on and picked through before it even reaches the individual Indian? To summarize, it's the level of people's preference. And yeah, it's true. People are so disheartened right now that they can't get involved. They don't have personal efficacy. They don't feel like this government is really working for them. And that goes across the board with everybody I talk to that are tribal members, that are my relations. And we are in a very dark era, but I feel like spring's coming around the corner, and I think we can have brighter days ahead. We just need to be pulling together. To either put it to a vote or not, then that's the people's voice, and then we'll find out the true preference of the Salish, Kootenai, Kalispel man and woman. And that's it. Thanks.
Dan?
Guys who attended these board or these committee meetings, I mean, is it on? Sorry.
Keep it close to your.
It was.
If you can keep it close to your, yeah.
All right. It was colorful. We had a lot of discussions. And I feel kind of sad because the people that we started with, a lot of them had left. And I'm just like, what Ethan had said, it's like two different worlds that come to this and everybody's like, oh, we should leave it. And then out there, you guys know I have a business and I talk to thousands of tribal members all the time. Most of them are saying, do something. And the easy thing is to leave it alone. We can. That's the easy thing to do. We are amazing people. You'll ever know. And we can do this. This is an opportunity. We can tackle for our future generations. I don't know if I have much more to say than that. That's just what I feel. Because we are strong, resilient people. So, thank you.
I'll start by saying I'd plan on just coming here to listen to see kind of what happened today, but words of members on the committee have inspired me to get up here and say my piece. But I won't be nearly as eloquent as Ethan. I've just been kind of jotting down some notes as I've been listening. I think it was mentioned earlier that the advisory committee was formed to advise you all on what to do, and I think that was a really good idea, but I think its efficacy was not carried out well. It was not really fortuitous in what came about out of there, and I will echo these guys that I hear a lot out with people I talk to that something should be changed to, that this is not a time to just sit on our hands. But ultimately, I feel that this decision needs to be yours, whether it goes to a vote. Well, it should go to a vote to the tribal members, but it should be, we've given you some good ideas. It's up to you to craft something now to go to a vote. And I also strongly believe that it should be a vote to all of the membership. Right now, our membership is only allowed to vote if you live on the reservation. Last time I checked, when I drive over the line going to Missoula, I don't suddenly become non-Indian and lose my blood. And so I've kind of wanted us to have an absentee system almost when it comes to voting. Just because you move off the reservation doesn't mean you're not invested in this tribe. I think when we start thinking about resources and scaling this, any decision that's come to, that obviously has to be at the forefront of our minds, but these things can be tiered out over time too, so that we don't impact those resources, or they could be tiered to certain membership having access to certain resources. Those are the creative thinking that needs to happen once this change is put in place, and it has to be rolled out right. And I think that's where a lot of the rubber needs to hit the road if there is a vote and the membership chooses to change it. That's the big fear for me. And I will just say that I'm not a fan of any colonial requirements, which blood quantum is. That was, as you expressed earlier, that was put in place by the federal government as a way for us to terminate ourselves. And there are many tribes that are doing that, and they're sitting on their hands, and they're going out of existence because they're not doing something. And I know our numbers are good now, but longitudinal studies show that that's probably going to change. It's likely going to change, and so it's going to have to be acted on at some point. And I think we have a lot of bright people in the younger generations coming up that are able to ensure the well-being of this tribe moving forward. And why not set them up for success without having to go through such a contentious issue? We could focus on a lot of other things. I'm not a big fan of lineal descendancy. I don't believe that we're there yet, but I think that all Indian blood is a idea that should be considered. Personally, that's my opinion. Even if you had to just include it to the Northwest tribes or Canadian tribes that we historically had contact with. And I just wanted to comment on not being linked culturally it's not the fault of some of the membership. I am one of those people that was not linked. I don't have access to the sweats and all the ceremonies because I found out after my dad passed away that he was very close to my great uncle, Victor Charlot, and he was steeped in the ceremonies and knew all of them. And he didn't share any of that with me. At some point in my young life, he made the decision that I was going to be better off. I mean, I'm already white passing as it is. I know that. And he figured that I was going to have a better life if I just became fully assimilated. And that took a piece away from me that I'm still trying to get back today. That was not my fault. That was the federal government's policies over the years to eradicate us. I would love to have more knowledge on my culture, and I try to learn more every day. And it's a process. It's not something that's easy when you're not raised in it. There's a lot of fear of going into situations like that. I want to go to jump dances, but I'm afraid because I have not been a part of that my entire life. So there are some hurdles there, and I think that goes a lot to identity, and which this could solve for a lot of people, especially ones that have been raised in our culture who are not members. So I just wanted to say that is not the fault of the membership not having that. And that definitely does not decrease my passion for my tribe and my fight for continuing our sovereignty. I went to law school and focused on Indian law so that I could be more well equipped to participate in my tribe later on and know how to fight the state and fight the federal government for what is rightfully ours. We are a sovereign nation at the equal footing of the federal government, period. So without my cultural background, I am still a fierce advocate for this tribe, and I'm still fiercely proud of this tribe. And one thing I just have to say it because it bothers me. I hear a lot of, and it goes back to the blood quantum thing. If we don't want the tribe to disappear, then you have to marry other tribal members. I don't agree with that one bit. There's actually a really good law review out of that being a restriction on reproductive freedom. And I think we've all seen Taylor Irvine's thing that she did for the National Museum of American Indians on marrying other tribal members even, and that diluting blood. Like, it just goes back to the blood quantum not being the answer. And that's really all I had to say. But I think ultimately this has to come from you, and it has to be voted on by all members. And then, as Ethan said, the voice of the membership will decide. It's not just hearsay at that point. It's what people use their vote power for. Thank you. Sorry.
I'm like this, Kelly Rose. I just wanted to let Chris know, I don't expect the membership to ever want to be, forced to have to get into the deep spiritual belief. You got to be raised with that, or you missed your boat completely. Unless you study quantum physics, then that'll explain our belief system 100%. It's getting backed up by science now. But what I want to say is, we have the river honorings. We have the medicine tree. We have the jump dances. We have the wakes and funerals. Those are some of the things that people can easily get reconnected to. Happen with our future tribal members. They'll start to be connected. They'll start to understand what it is for us to have togetherness, to be tribal. But when you totally allow our membership to say, come on to our rolls, but you don't have to do anything beyond that. Well, that brings us to the state we're in. And no matter what we do going forward to correct this, unless you pretty much make your people have an allegiance to your ways, your life ways, they're never going to connect. And we're just going to keep fading out, only at a much faster rate. I say that you allow our committee a couple more months to fine tune what it could look like and how fair it could be for our people to start reconnecting. The sky's the limit on ideas. And I want to say one final thing, just like any other organization that you belong to, you're going to have the people that show up every day. They show up, but they really don't contribute. You're going to have the people that come a few times and they're the ideas people and they solve the problems. And then you're going to have the group who carry it forward. You're going to have that no matter what organization, what entity you belong to. So I don't want you to think because so many people dropped out or decided not to come or got their feelings hurt or whatever. There was a small committed group that are sitting right here that said, we're going to make sure that we take this opportunity and we come up with something beautiful that fits, for the most part, our needs. And we're committed to do that if you guys will continue working with us. And I really think this was an excellent experience. I really thank you, council people, for allowing us to do this. And I know we're not there yet, but we're dang near there. And so don't think that we're going to hold some cultural standard over everyone's head. We know that's not the reality, because even if you did want to get in most of these groups, I'm barely even a member. That's how hard it is. You have to be raised with it. And that's when it works. And that's when it's beautiful. And that's what will restore the health of our people. But you have to allow the people that know what's best as far as us maintaining our cultural integrity to be the driving force to bring us all together. It's not going to happen with a group of people that have no connection, no idea, even outside groups. I don't think we need any outside group to tell us anything. We have all the answers right in this room.
Oh, good morning or good afternoon. I'm Kelly O'Benick Woodcock. This was a learning experience. I went into this group having ideas. One of the first things I said to the group was come into this group with no personal agenda. Come in with an open heart and an open mind. I have nothing to gain from enrollment. My kids are enrolled. My grandma told me when I was younger, my guy and my grandpa said, you know, when you get older, you make sure your kids are enrolled. I was told that from probably when I was 2 years old. I grew up that way. Both my girls are enrolled. I told my girls both to this day. I told Christine, when you start having kids, you make sure your kids are enrolled. I'm not saying they have to be enrolled here, enrolled somewhere, is all I told her. The only thing I have to say is it's been fun. There was a lot of good conversation that happened with this group. But the thing that I would like to see more would be the younger generation more involved. I think the youngest person in the group was your son, or no, yeah, numbers. But I'd like to see when you guys make your decision or whatever you guys decide, that you make sure you involve the youth. Let them have a voice, because right now they weren't present. They weren't present at this group. And they're going to be ultimately the decision that we make or that you guys make or we as a tribe make is going to affect them, not us. It's going to affect them. So we need to think about the future of the tribe and the future of our kids and let them decide. Shehoy.
Thank you. Well, thank you for the report. Okay, Junior.
Gosh, where do I start? You know, coming together for this committee here and what the challenges were going to be. You know, I said, well, you know, I have to come and I have to listen. Not me. So I want to be there to represent who I am. Learning experience. I got to listen to understanding of what we were going to be talking about, to find out, to know their opinions on enrollment. You know, that was pretty big. Myself, you know, it starts back many years ago, and I don't know if they even called it, but the education part of this reservation here. Parents telling their children, dad telling us. You don't marry this person and this person, you won't be enrolled. If you go someplace else, you marry, there's a chance you're not going to be enrolled. And today, this was going to come. You all knew it. But that didn't stop you from who you married. who you had children with. It didn't stop you then. Now, you see an urgency that our enrollment is declining, so let's enroll. Let's start enrolling right now. People on our rolls. That's what's taking place. People that are here today, we have people that will stand up for themselves and stand up for their families. Else on our rolls that aren't today. If they're born, if they have enough, sure, put them on. Oh, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 15, 20,000 more people. Well, some of the stuff that were brought up, if you went that route, yes, we would have that much enrolled today. On their own foot today, they can't get enrolled, their kids can't get enrolled. That's who's standing up today, and that's who's promising their people that I'll look into it. For saying that, that's why we're here today. Is, you know, we're doing good the way we are. It's so big, we can fix that. I told them just do away with blood quantum altogether. Now, those that are enrolled are enrolled. Those that want to be enrolled, well, there's criteria you have to meet. Quantum is always going to be an issue. Get rid of it. We can handle this on our own today. Without blood quantum, we can do it. You know, to leave it alone, you know, I'm for English or flathead, kootenai bloods. I'm for that. But starting to enroll members from all these other tribes, no, we can't do that. We chose this life, we chose this way, we chose who we wanted to be with. Live with it. But don't take from us. Don't take from us. You live with what you ended up with, what you have. You live with it. Like I'm going to live with what I have. Decision. All these people made their decision back in the day. Now live with it. Don't try to take from me. The vote of any sort. How important this is. Work and fix it, yeah, there is. We talked about it here. There's other ways we can go about doing this. Indians alone. We're here. To say this because I care about you all. But when you start infringing in my way, taking from me, giving it to who? Thank you.
Now that you heard from us what we come up with the document, and you guys understand that truly we're not all on the same page. You guys opened up an advisory committee, put it out in the paper, Everybody submitted a letter. Everybody that submitted a letter, I approved, they submitted a letter, got in. I think we started off with 40 people, at least 40 people in a room. That was set up for failure. You put 40 people in a room and everybody come in with their own personal agenda. And that's why I said, come in with no personal gain. People come in, I want my kid enrolled. I want my grandbabies enrolled. I want the split family enrolled. Those are all personal gains. We're not in this for personal gain. We're in this for the future of our kids. So now that you heard from us, what's your guys' next step? Where do we go from here? What are you guys going to do?
I don't see the failure you're talking about, Kelly. I see a lot of information that was gathered by all of you folks. And that's what I was looking for, was information. And your opinions are important. And looking at that and collecting all that. And I'm glad that the letters have been submitted as well as the summaries. And take that information and do a little digesting on it is what I will be doing personally. We as a council still sit as an enrollment committee as such, and that hasn't been disbarred. And so I'm hoping we'll take that information, come and bring that information together and discuss that information. I don't know what will come out of that. I don't. So.
Well, I put my letter in to be on the board. Went to the first meeting. I've seen all these people, all these 350 million ideas, what they wanted. A lot of crazy ideas to me. A lot of things that were said were illogical. Be raised by my grandmother, Clarice. She's one who was in the Swan massacre. Samili, Millie, Juwankorn. In Mission, Agnes Inkashula. All those people I was around. Big Cranes, Dixon. They're all my grandmother's relatives. On my mother's side, Poker Jim. Here, my family has. The old way of Indian way of doing things, thinking. Clarice told me, and Smee told me. They talked about enrollment back then, back in the 50s. 53, they changed it to quarter degree. Talking about enrollment, what the chief said, Charlo, Alexander, all of them talked about enrollment. Among themselves, they said, if a woman marries this person, they're that. A man takes this woman and marries her, he's that person's tribe. Before 53. About things like this. All these ideas people have because they have wants and needs. I look at the person. Man, my nephew Tony talked. We talked about this. We talked about, do you know who you are? Who's your family? What's your tree? Where do you come from? Back in the 30s and 20s, We had a lot of Chinese that lived in Polson area on the lake, and the tribes intermarried with them. Asian people in our tribe. Clarice Paul, my grandmother owned that pond. Crees lived. Intermarried with them. Over here, where the People's Center was, the Pagans lived there. With them. Where do you come from? What was going on? My grandmother, she was a little guy. She was talking to me. She put me on her bed and she sat me on a bed and she told me, education. She couldn't speak English, but she told me, you have to have that paper to have a job in the future. I had an education. I did get that paper so I could work. Enrollment. I say we leave it as it is, as old people have said. In our tribe with the split family vote twice. That was with McDonald, Hot Springs. We put on a powwow job corps to bring the people together again to heal. How much anger there was then. I felt the anger. Anger, the young people wondering why. A little older than me that weren't enrolled were mad because why? What we have. Beautiful land. On our land. People don't know it, but we have gold on our reservation that we put down a few decades ago not to explore. We have copper. We put that down. We didn't want to explore because we knew what it'd do to our land. For a lot of years, I've seen ups and downs of our timber. One time our timber was going for $900 a thousand. Logs at the time. And our employees now, they get snow days. Remember working, scaling. I'd come back to the office. I and Louis Allen come back to the office and everybody was gone. Because they had a snow day. That we had to go out there and work. We never got those days off. Snow day. There's dinner at Quatucknuck. There's quite a few elder people there. I've seen some employees playing. Gamble. Snow day. Things like this to happen. One meeting I said, I'm getting tired of paying people for not doing their work. We're talking about enrollment. Let's leave it as it is for now until we get into more information, what's going to happen with all of us. I was watching the Senate hearings. They were voting on FBI director who had a long criminal history. New FBI director. Influences on a reservation. We're in trouble. as a tribe, our forestry department hasn't brought in the finances in that came in. Other resources that we have haven't brought the resources that money that we need to have. Each one of us is going to have to decide, because we're going to have to do without a lot of resources that we used to getting. Advisory board, because I wanted to make sure, thinking that wouldn't be all crazy, wouldn't be all where people wouldn't be able to live with. Yeah. 1,000 tribal members, what their idea was. You'd be amazed at what kind of things they tell you. I say, well, I was glad to be with these young people here I worked with. Some a little older than me. We worked together in BIA. And sometimes I'd have to stay up and say, it's enough. In language, if you didn't grow up with the language or the culture, that was the choice of your family. Wasn't your choice. And so you have the same rights as I do and anybody else that has enrolled. He lives off the reservation. He retired from the Army. He said, I live off the reservation. From the tribe because I have to make it on my own. A tribal per capita because I make enough money to pay my own way. Back in the 60s when Kennedy was president, he asked us what we can do for our country, not what we can do for ourselves. What can I do to help? I'd like to say, ask the advisory board if we couldn't come to a conclusion because we had so many different ideas. We'll face the same decision too. Ideas, there's 10 of you. Ideas. We'll just leave our enrollment as it is, keep the quarter degree like they decided in 53 when they're having so much disagreement. I have to worry about things. I worry about making day to day with buying groceries and stuff because I ask for help and they say I make too much money. So I don't get the commodities, I don't get any other resources. I live. My language, I rise to make my own sweat. They come and bring me wood for it because I go out and get my own wood because it's my choice. I want to do these things. My dad was that way. My grandmother was that way. I'd like to leave you guys, say thank you for the opportunity to be on the board. Here that put up with me. Archie Bunker kind of guy. I don't mix words. I'll tell it like it is. Guys, and whatever happens, will be okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip. Yeah, come on up.
Gabe Kayai. And I first started doing some research on enrollment back in 2023 for a writing research paper. And through my research, I looked at a lot of different aspects to what other tribes were doing, and everybody was basically doing the same conversation: lineal descendancy, lowering their blood quantum, or either, boosting everybody to 4 So the reason why I joined this enrollment committee was to try to give an alternative perspective into it, try to think outside the box a little bit. And the only thing that really popped into my mind was using like algebraic expressions by solving for the population decay. I think that the biggest issue going on right now is, we're unique in the sense of, we're not a tribe that has 150 members that has, hundreds of millions of dollars, that needs the population boosts that can sustain doing lineal descendancy to boost their numbers. We have land resources. We're pretty solid in the amount of people that we have in our tribal membership. So when I was doing some calculations and everything, solving for the population decay of our tribe and try to figure out a solution to try to get the tribe on a healthy growth rate. So I don't know if that really garnered much traction towards the end because I had to go back to school back in August. So I was only able to make the early meetings. I don't really know where we finished at towards the end. I lost my credentials for my CSKT email, so I wasn't getting all the updates, but I just wanted to get up here and say my piece. Thank you.
Thanks, Gabe.
I missed the first meeting, but then after that, there was quite a few people that attended. And what I heard then was that everybody wanted it to be fair to everyone. Some didn't want change, but everyone said if there's gonna be something done, it needs to be fair. And they thought it should go to a vote. And I'm happy, Tom, that you told us why this committee was formed, because no one knew. Philip would try to tell us from talking, but there was a lot of swirling going around of why we were even here to do this. I think there was a lot of good ideas that come out. I think the group was too large. It was fun, but I think more discussion. It got a little nasty, but it could get nastier, and that's the part we didn't get to. I think there's a lot of ideas, and at the end, the last meeting, I told the group, mostly these guys here, that I think there could be something done with stipulations. There's something out there, but we all gotta, this group or whoever it is that is gonna be, has to elaborate on it. And hard questions need to be asked, so that's what I seen, and it was enjoyable. you know, yeah, so I think it was good. I don't know if there needs to be change right now. I looked at some numbers and I think that we're a healthy population, but I do know that somewhere down the road, it's gonna have to happen. And like some of these guys saying here, you know, we just gonna kick the can further down the road, or do we wanna, you know, really make the tough decisions? No one's gonna, you know, be pleased with it all. You know, there was a lot of talk about split families within our group, you know, so a lot of things were thought about and discussed. Sometimes we just really spun our wheels back and back, you know, but it needed to be said, you know. So hey,
Thank you, Gigi. More statements. We do have more agenda yet today. And sure appreciate the work that this committee has done. And as I said a little bit ago, I don't see the failure Kelly was pointing at. I see a lot of information that has been brought forward and a lot of opinions, and they all count. We have to look at them all. And we will do that as a committee. So thank you all.
Please don't keep working. Those people that said they want to keep discussing, I'm not one of them. They don't speak for me.
Can we go into executive?
See you later.
Just the appointment, yeah.
Can we go into executive?
Out of regular into executive.